Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's meeting of the Oklahoma City Planning Commission. Before we get started, I'm just going to go over through housekeeping items. If you have a cell phone with you, please silence or turn it off at this time. If you're here to speak on an item and are not the applicant, please fill out one of the forms available outside on the desk and provide it to Elena or Jared down here in front. So that when your item is called, we'll call you up to speak when it's the appropriate time. When that time comes, please come up to the podium, give your name and address for the record. You'll have up to 5 minutes to speak. If you're here to speak on an item with a large group of people, we encourage you to elect a representative to share your group's concerns. And if that's the case, some additional time will be given to that person so that everyone's concerns are shared. When there are several speakers to be heard on an item, please do your best to limit repetitious comments to concerns that we haven't heard yet. We'll limit the right to limit comments if necessary, if we're hearing the same thing. And then lastly, thank you. Please direct all your comments and questions to the commission, and if needed, we will ask the applicant or city staff to respond. We also ask that you refrain from shouting from the gallery. Finally, we appreciate everyone's presence here today and the time that you've taken away from your jobs and your obligations, and we just kindly ask for your assistance in upholding the decorum of this meeting. So thank you for that. And with that, we'll move to item 1 on the agenda, item 2 of the agenda, which is receipt of the minutes from July 25th.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the minutes from July 25th.
A motion from Commissioner Noble to receive the minutes. It's been seconded by Commissioner Pennington. Please cast your votes. And that item passes. Next is continuance requests.
We have two uncontested requests for continuance. On your agenda, item B24, PUD 2009, will be deferred to August 22nd, and item B25, SPUD 1657, will be deferred to September 12th.
Do we have anyone to speak on any of those items? All right, if not, I just need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the uncontested requests as read.
All right. A motion to approve the uncontested continuous requests as read. It's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And those are approved. New requests.
We have two new requests for continuance. These are not listed on your agenda, so please check. Item B9 is SPUD 1650. That'll be deferred to August 22nd. And item B11, which is SPUD 1643, defer to August 22nd.
And I don't see anyone signed up to speak. Anyone here to speak on those items? Okay, just need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the new requests as read.
A motion from Commissioner Noble to approve the new requests is read. It's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes. And those items pass. Next item is the consent docket.
Okay, we have 3 items on the consent docket. Item 1 is C7673, the final plat of Hidden Creek, located east of North Piedmont Road and south of 122nd. I'm sorry, that's phase 2. Item number 2 is C7674, the final plat of Lexford Park Phase 1, located north of Northwest 36th Street and east of North Walker. And then item 3 is C7676, the final plat of Arcady, which is located south of East Memorial Road and east of North Midwest Boulevard.
All right. Is there anyone that would like to speak on the consent docket items? All right, seeing none. Just need a motion.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent docket.
So a motion from Commissioner Noble to approve the consent docket. It's been seconded by... We'll get that swapped. Motion by Commissioner Noble, seconded by Commissioner Pennington. Please cast your votes. All right, consent docket passes. That brings us to items requiring a separate vote in our first item.
Item number 4 is C7675, the final plat of NHB Industrial Park revised, which is located west of South Rockwell Avenue and north of Southwest 74th, and a variance to section 5.4.2.E.5 of the subdivision regulations.
Good afternoon, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates. Address is 1 East Sheridan Avenue. Before you use a plat that you actually approved last year, it just didn't make it to the county to be recorded yet. There was an issue when it came to the street construction. It was actually done through a building permit, constructed to city standards, but as a private drive instead of a private street. Typically, an engineer would submit plans through Public Works, and that's what would take it through the formal process to be a public street or private street. This accidentally made it through a building permit stage, and so in an effort to correct that, because it's already constructed, we've refiled the plat. What we're asking for is to allow for it to be a private drive. However, we've put a note on the face of the plat that requires all private drives to be constructed to the industrial street standard that's public standard. So with that, we'd ask for your approval, and then the variance is now required because it's a private drive that we're seeking to name. In working with Jared, there wasn't enough addresses in the range to allow it to all be addressed off the public street. So that's why we need the variance.
Okay. Commissioner Meek, this is your ward.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, this is just a cleanup item. I don't see any issue with this. I spoke with the applicant regarding everything that I had questions on. Do we have anyone signed up to speak?
No.
Okay.
Hey, Mr. Meek, I just want to make sure that the Public Works has been out, seen it, approves it, is good with the switch that we're doing, or not?
Very large Public Works. I don't know that we've had inspectors out there to actually inspect this part of that private drive. Since it is going to be private, then it doesn't become quite as big of an issue. And that if it had gone through as a private drive originally, even if they were saying they were going to construct to city standards, we would not have had city inspectors look at it. If it went through as a public street or a private street, then we would have. But having it go through as a private drive, then we would not have the field services crews out there doing inspections.
So, Barry, basically the answer is no to that. They're not going to inspect it because it is a private drive. Okay, that's what I thought also. If anyone doesn't have anything else regarding this, I'll start with the variance to recommend approval of variance to section 5.4.2.E.5 of the subdivision regulations.
All right. Commissioner Meek motions to approve the variance. It's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes.
Okay.
Variance passes.
Yes, with that, I'll recommend approval of C-7675 with the existing 4 TEs.
So motion from, to approve the item subject to technical evaluations. It's been seconded by Commissioner LaForge. Please cast your votes. That item passes.
Thank you.
Thank you. Item 5.
Item 5 is PUD 1532, 6-SP02, which is a application for a specific plan pursuant to the approval of PUD 1532 located at 3841 Northwest 166th Street.
Good afternoon, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. This is a continuation of the Port 164 development in northwest Oklahoma City. This is one of the remainder lots. It's an office building. Not all of the parking is on site. There's a parking lot caddy corner to this building that is for overflow parking for all of the users there. With that, it conforms to all of the regulations of the PUD, and we would ask for your approval.
Commissioner Noble, this is Ward 8.
Yep, I looked at the case, and staff recommends that it meets all the, it's consistent with the PUD, so I have no problem with it. Make a motion to approve PUD 1532 SB02.
A motion from Commissioner Noble to approve specific Plan 02 of PUD 1532. It's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. That item is approved.
Thank you.
Item 6.
Item 6 is PUD 1530 SP02, which is an application for another specific plan pursuant to the approval of PUD 1530 located at 1803 East Britton Road.
Good afternoon, Stephen Cooksey with Kenway Horn, 4727 Galardia Parkway. As noted in the staff report, site plan, building elevations, landscape plan, and lighting plan, all in conformance with the PUD as well as applicable zoning code, so be happy to answer any questions this time.
Commissioner Pennington, this is Ward 7.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Looking at it, it looks good to me. Looks like it's consistent with the underlying PUD, which was approved a long time ago, even before I was on the Planning Commission. So I'm in full support and would love to make the motion, assuming we don't have anybody signed up to speak.
We do not.
Mr. Chairman, I move to recommend approval of PUD 1530's specific plan number 2.
I have a motion from Commissioner Pennington to approve PUD 1530 SP02. It was seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. That item is approved. Takes us to item 7.
Item 7 is case number PC 10942, an application to rezone 11310 North Council Road from PUD 1286 to the R2 district.
Good afternoon, Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates. Address is 1 East Sheridan Avenue. Before you is a kind of leftover tract of land. As you can see, a lot of this area has already been developed. We're requesting an R2 zoning. Immediately to our east, you see the R2. Those are all duplexes there. It's in conformance with the comprehensive plan. We've not received any phone calls or protests or questions on this one. With that, we'd ask for your recommendation of approval.
This is Ward 1. I do not have any questions, concerns, and I did not hear from anyone, so I think it's pretty straightforward.
Mr. Chair, was anyone here to speak on this?
No.
Okay, with that, I would like to make a motion to approve PC 10942.
The motion from Commissioner Noble to approve item PC 10942. It's been seconded by Commissioner Pennington. Please cast your votes. That item passes.
Thank you.
Item 8.
Item 8 is case number CE1126, an application to close a portion of North-South Alley in Block 15 of Nees Addition, and then close a portion of the Linwood Boulevard right-of-way and a portion of the North Klein right-of-way.
Mark Zitzow with Johnson & Associates, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. Before you is a bit of a cleanup. Our client went under contract with this property. A survey was done, and what it found was that there were multiple encroachments from this historic building within the right-of-way. So in working with the title company to remedy the situation, it was determined that the best course of action would be to close and vacate portions of this right-of-way. Upon filing of the application, we had submitted just the areas of encroachment. In discussions with staff, which logically asked for kind of a smooth new line rather than just having little indentations in the right-of-way. So we revised the legals, resubmitted it, and so they've recommended approval. The first TE is asking us to, on Klein, only include the areas of encroachment on the second part of that TE. So we do agree to that. We can amend the legal. The encroachment along Klein is a loading dock, and so the building's there. It's, again, a title issue. So we're asking for your recommendation of approval. We agree to the TEs, but for TE1, it's an either or, and we are asking for the latter part of the TE to apply. Revise the request to close a portion of North Klein to only these areas of actual encroachment. And that would be the southwest corner, yep, where the loading dock occurs.
Okay. Commissioner Govine, this is Ward 6.
Yes, I have reviewed the case with the applicant. I don't have any issue with it. I understand it's going to facilitate the redevelopment of the New Way Cleaners building, which would be great to see. And so I'm in support. If there's any other questions or anyone signed up to speak?
Don't have anyone signed up to
Appear to
speak.
be. In which case, I will move to recommend approval of item CE 1126.
The
Subject-
revised TE.
With, well, what I did, sorry, okay. Are we revising the TE?
We're striking
Yes.
the first portion because it's
Oh.
listed as an either or.
Apologies. We need to strike, remove the request to close a portion of North Klein Avenue from the application, and just TE1 to state, revise the request to close a portion of North Klein Avenue to only those areas of actual encroachment, and TE2 remains as written.
All right. So I have a motion from Commissioner Govine to recommend approval of item CE 1126, subject to the amended technical evaluation 1 and technical evaluation 2. It's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And that item passes. Thank you. Item 9 has been deferred. Item 10.
Item 10 is KC 7667, the preliminary plat of Willow Trails, located north of Southwest 29th Street and west of South Sarah Road.
Mark Zitzow, 1 East Sheridan Avenue. Before you is a preliminary plat that conforms in most part to a PUD that was approved earlier this year. We do have 8 TEs. We agree to all of them. But I think the key thing on this preliminary plat that conforms to the PUD is the way that the common areas were designed. There is common area through the center of the plat back to the main pond, and then an additional small pocket park type areas on the northwest portions of this plat. So there was a discrepancy in the interpretation of the PUD for duplex lot sizes. We've talked with staff. That's been TE'd. We'll amend the plat and resubmit it to planning prior to filing of the final plat, but we do agree with all the TEs and would ask for your approval.
Great. Commissioner Meek, this is Ward 3.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. Do we have anyone sign up to speak regarding this case?
I do not.
Okay. With the 8 TEs that are on it, it looks to comply with the PUD, and I have no issue with it. I'm ready to recommend approval unless anyone has any other questions. Okay. I'd like to recommend approval of C7667.
Have a motion from Commissioner Meek to approve item C 7667, subject to the technical evaluations. It's been seconded by Commissioner Pennington. Please cast your votes. And that item is approved.
Thank you.
Item 11 has been deferred. Item 12.
Item 12 is SPUD 1656, an application to rezone 9841 Southwest 44th Street from the R1 district to SPUD 1656.
Good afternoon, Mason Schwartz, 522 Colcord Drive, here on behalf of the applicant. This is an SPUD for a property roughly 3 acres, undeveloped, on Southwest 44th to the west of Morgan. This parcel was originally zoned and included in the subdivision to the west, which is Morgan Glen, or contemplated, but not ultimately included in the final plat. So it was removed before the subdivision was platted, parceled off to be sold, and so the original owner is now selling it to our client, who's purchasing it under contract. Our client is seeking to use the property to construct a personal storage barn to allow for personal storage of equipment, tools, that kind of stuff. It's a typical accessory building, but what the SPUD does is it keeps the current R1 zoning, but also allows the building to be built independently as a principal building instead of as an accessory building. So the plan is to construct the barn kind of as set out in the site plan without having to first construct a residence. And we have the site plan attached as well, if any details on that. We do have one change. So there was a number of suggested red lines from city staff. We incorporated them into our revised version. However, we did make one change to page 2, section 5, when it's the building line setbacks. Staff's language said no structures or impervious pavement shall be included within 100 feet of the floodway of the tributary of Mustang Creek that flows through the site. We actually need to strike that. Our site plan does show that we will be outside of 100 feet from within the floodway boundary, so we're not violating that provision per se. However, we are not authorized by the current owner to include that in the SPUD in the event that the contract were to fall through, and then he would have that encumbrance in the property for a new buyer. So we need to strike that. So we would request as part of the motion that it be approved subject to the condition that this last sentence in section 5 of page 2 be stricken. Beyond that, on that note though, of course we will meet all flood regulations and all regulations provided in the code. We believe it's consistent with the comp plan, compatible with surrounding properties, not aware of any protests, and would ask for your approval.
Thank you. Commissioner Meek, Ward 3 is popular today.
Can I ask, would it be possible to amend the TE so that it indicates that no residential structure could be? I'm not crazy about the idea of just a sort of a blank check away from, you intend to comply with the language, and I get that, but if the property is sold before it's developed or whatever, I certainly would not want any kind of residential structure built within that, so I don't see the harm in including the language. I'm sorry.
You're good.
Yeah, and it wasn't a TE. I have to expected it to be in the TEs.
It was, but it got baked into the,
It got
baked into the SPUD, and they're wanting to pull it back out. That is the issue. I have this exact TE on several other cases upcoming, and it's started appearing on most of them. And I'm fine with this application, because also baked into the SPUD is that they have to comply with Chapter 16 of the drainage ordinance, which takes care of all my concerns. The house I live in wouldn't be allowed to be built if that was a TE on where I live, and so I don't know, this keeps coming up, and so far it's been removed multiple times. Any other comments from other commissioners?
They'd still get protection because they wouldn't be able to get a building permit without a survey and an elevation that met the criteria to be out of the floodplain.
Right, and a 2-part permit with a finished floor elevation certificate. I mean, there's ways around this being an issue. So.
That's correct.
Okay.
It's still a hot topic.
It's still a hot topic.
Where there's
Right.
lack of comfort, but
Right.
I agree with the approach in this case. I just think we need to continue the conversation and find a way to limit development within existing established floodways.
Right, but I have a case on the other side of this very creek that has the TE that we have to deal with again. So, like I said, there's a lot of creeks, and as long as they comply to Chapter 16 and do it the right way, I believe all the protections baked in to the building permit process.
So I would say that if we're going to add a TE that removes that language, that we would also include so long as it complies with Chapter you know, meets all requirements of Chapter 16, Section 16 of the Drainage Ordinance. So,
Yeah, and I was planning on doing that, but
And do we need that since
I
it's
find
already
it,
in the spud?
I find it, and it's in the spud specifically.
Right.
Okay.
So,
It's on page 5.
yep,
Hey,
Page 5, number 8.
yep. So,
All right.
with that being said, I will recommend approval of SPUD 1656, striking the language that would prohibit structures and impervious paving within 100 feet of the floodway of Mustang Creek.
A motion from Commissioner Meek to recommend approval of SPUD 1656. It's been seconded by Commissioner LaForge. Please cast your votes. And that passes.
Thank you,
Thank you. Takes us to item 13.
Item 13 is SPUD 1633, an application to rezone 100 Northwest 22nd Street from the HP Historic Preservation and the UC Urban Conservation Districts to SPUD 1633.
Good afternoon, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. Here on behalf of the applicant, the architect also here with us. I'm happy to report that yesterday, after hours of sitting through an exhilarating debate of historic preservation matters, my item finally came up, and it was unanimously recommended for approval, and further, for the first time in my career, citizens from the HP district came to this very podium and voiced their support for the project. So with that, I'm happy to answer any and all questions you have. There are no TEs, and we would ask for your recommendation for approval.
Thank you.
Pay those people.
Commissioner Govine, this is Ward 6.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I am very pleased to hear that, Mr. Box, and congratulations to the HP Commission for moving this one forward. I'm in support. I think it's an appropriate development on an infill site that's been vacant for a long time. It's on the fringe of Heritage Hills East, across from the fire station and some C4 commercial. Is there anyone signed up to speak today?
No.
Any questions from other commissioners?
I feel like I should vote no just to make sure that David had one negative for this proposal, like his modern miracle.
That's right.
Well, I will move to recommend approval of SPUD 1633.
I have a motion from Commissioner Govine to recommend approval of City Council of SPUD 1633. It's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. And that item passes.
Thank you.
Item 14.
Item 14 is SPUD 1647, an application to rezone 3800 Southwest 27th Place from R1 and I2 and the AE2 Airport Environs Overlay to SPUD 1647 with the AE overlay.
Once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. This is kind of an infill lot that is half zoned R1, and I guess it's a little more than half R1, and then you have some I2. What we're proposing is a SPUD that would allow for single-family development. Jared, if you could go and show the site plan. So what we will be doing is extending 27th there along the north of these lots, extending Quapaw down. We do need to modify the lot size because of the way that cul-de-sac bulb happens at lots 26, 27, 28. We need to modify so that the minimum lot size shall be 3,900 square feet. Other than that, there are no TEs, so we would just add that one. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Meek, this is Ward 3 again. I do have someone signed up to speak.
Yep, thank you. This is what happens when you miss a meeting, I guess. I'd like to hear from the people that have signed up to speak first, if you don't mind.
So I don't have a name, but it's a resident on Southwest 27th Street. No name was provided. So if you were here to speak on item SPUD 1647, no?
The individual that signed up sat behind me. He said he was just curious as to whether or not 27th would be double laned.
Okay.
So I answered that question.
Okay. All right. Then there's no one to speak.
Okay. With that being said, I have met and spoke with the applicant. We did get an updated exhibit site plan that did extend the street, which is what we were needing. I do appreciate the minimum lot widths being baked in at a minimum width of 40 feet. Staff recommends approval, and I agree. So unless any other commissioners have any comments, I'm ready to recommend approval of SPUD 1647 with a TE being added to that the minimum lot size can be 3,900 square feet.
A motion from Commissioner Meek to recommend approval of SPUD 1647, subject to the new technical evaluation. It's been seconded by Commissioner Newman. Please cast your votes. That item passes. Item 15.
Item 15 is SPUD 1655, an application to rezone 2820 North Robinson Avenue from the R4, the HL Historic Landmark, and the UC Urban Conservation Overlay Districts to SPUD 1655 with the HL and UC overlays.
Is the applicant present?
Clauser and Phillip, 2801 North Hudson. And yeah, this one was also heard at HP yesterday. It's zoned R4. Really the reason for the SPUD is to modify a side yard setback. Yeah, we got approval at HP yesterday. We've met with the neighbors. I think everyone's pretty happy with the site development approach. I've met with Commissioner Powers a few times on this, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Powers, this is Ward 2.
We did have a very, very, very last-minute meeting. It's almost late to the meeting because of it, about the side yard setback, which is really the only reason why we're even here in this case. Normally, I focus pretty clearly on maintaining visual setbacks, and since there are properties to the east of this that face Northwest 28th Street, I was kind of focused on that. But in fact, it was pointed out to me that that is not the pattern of development in Jefferson Park on corners. And Ms. Ryman Phillip was pointing out to me that even the case that we heard in Heritage Hills East, was a similar kind of setback variation. It provides a little bit of protection for the residential properties from a busy front yard setback on the property. It does stick out a bit more, but it's not visually restricting in some kind of strange way. But as I looked at it and looked at the other properties around the area, it made perfect sense to me. So I lost my concern about that, and it was the only one I had. Is there anybody here that's...
I don't have anyone signed up to speak.
I really, really love to see infill development in Ward 2, and I especially like to see it, in an area like Jefferson Park where, it's actually being done on vacant property. So I'm all in favor. If there's not anybody else who has any questions or concerns they want to voice, I'll move approval for item number 15, SPUD 1655.
A motion from Commissioner Powers to recommend approval of SPUD 1655. It's been seconded by Commissioner Meek. Please cast your votes. That item passes. Thank you.
Thank you.
Item 16.
Item 16 is SPUD 1646, an application to rezone 400 Southeast 27th Street from the R2 district and the MH Manufactured Home Overlay District to SPUD 1646.
Is the applicant present?
Hello, Nick Singer, 3308 South Durland. Guess to tell you guys, this is my first one. I've never done one of these
All right,
before.
just
so-
welcome. Tell us about your project.
Yeah, so it is a 100-foot by 140 lot. Going to use the alley for parking. Parking will be around the back, but it's a 10-unit development that we are going to try and put affordable housing on. So currently submitted for possibly some ARPA funding, but if it doesn't get that, it will go to other incentive programs that are out there. And so getting the zoning in place is a requirement for basically every affordable housing incentive program in existence. So would really love to see it get approved.
All right. Commissioner Privet, this is Ward 4.
Yep. This is another great infill project. We had a couple of these today. The only thing I noticed there, it says it's got a minimum lot width of 100 feet in it. Is that correct, or I don't think you can get 100 feet minimum in there, can you?
I mean, it's
Is it a
it's
big- good
250
size
by
lot?
140 lots,
Oh,
so
okay. Yeah, all right.
gotta be
Awesome then.
just based
No, that's
on
fine.
lot
I
size.
just want to make sure it was enough.
But yeah, it's a corner lot, so
Right.
you know, there's churches on another corner. There's an oil rig at the other end of the
Okay.
block from where
Right.
mine is. So
Right.
lot of stuff going on around there.
All right. I don't suspect anybody signed up to speak on this one either. So I'll recommend approval of SPUD 1646.
Commissioner Privet moves to recommend approval of SPUD 1646. It's been seconded by Commissioner Pennington. Please cast your votes. That item passes. Good luck.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Takes us to item 17.
Item 17 is SPUD 1654, an application to rezone 7,000 South Cimarron Road from the AA District to SPUD 1654.
Dean Colita, Civil and Environmental Consultants, 4700 Galardia Parkway, Suite 101, representing the applicant. On this tract, the original tract here is a 5-acre. There's an existing home, brand-new home on this tract, and the purpose is to just split this to put another home on the back side of it. The SPUD was done to get the 2-acre lot minimum and also to limit the access to the minimum lot width to 25 feet so we can get the access to the back. Similar, if you pull up the aerial, you can see the similar to the north is kind of what was done prior and a different split there. And across the street there on the west side, there's also a similar development there. There was some protest letters that we received, and we've responded to them. We did have a manufactured use for some outbuildings, but we've since removed that, so it's just single family. Other comments were infrastructure. This will be well in septic, so there's really no infrastructure concerns. The other concern was the property values being decreased. So existing home that's on the property is $900,000. And the next home being proposed to being built is going to be between the $700,000 and $800,000 range. So I don't think property values become an issue on that deal. So that's essentially what the SPD is trying to create, is just another home there. And on the southwest 74th, you can see there's actually under 2-acre tracts there. So it is compatible with the area. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but we recommend approval.
Okay. I just want to make sure I heard you said you did have a manufactured
removed-
building
Yeah. and we
use in there, and you've removed it.
We've removed it, yes, sir. So just single family. And we also updated the facade requirement to be 7% brick, stone, and hardy board.
All right. Commissioner Meek, this is Ward 3.
Yes, sir. Spoke with the applicant, had quite a bit of protest, and all of those concerns have been addressed with the modifications to the application. Drove this area. There's several of these exact situations out there, and I believe with the modifications, I'm okay with this. Does anyone sign up to
I
speak?
do have 3 that have signed up to speak on
Okay.
this item, so you ready to hear from them?
Yes, sir.
All right, Mr. Stephen Barros. No? Robert Stevens, yes, I do have Robert Stevens. Please,
Time to address the council today.
yes, please give us your name and address for the record, and you have up to 5 minutes. please.
Robert Stevens, 7100 Bronco Lane, Mustang, Oklahoma. I'd like to start by telling you that I live less than a quarter mile from that property, and we were never notified of it. I only found out from the people behind me on Cimarron Road. And I'm sure there's many neighbors who would prefer to be here if the city has seen fit to send out some more notifications than just to a few people over there, you know? I don't know what the rules are on that, but we're pretty close. We moved out there, when we bought out there, no one was allowed to have anything on less than 5 acres, you know? And this request for rezoning is just not about changing from agricultural to residential. Our original thing that we saw said they want to put like manufactured housing in there. Now, I understand they've changed that to go to the house they want to build, but you know, everything they're putting out there puts more strain on our infrastructure. We've had limited supplies of county water and stuff like that. They are widening the highway down there, but we had to pay a whole bunch of money, a bunch of us did, just to get the county water in out there, and now all this is coming in on top of us, and it has always been a minimum of 5 acres, and that's just the way we prefer to keep it, you know. And we have a petition back here with some other people that have signed it. I don't know how you submit stuff.
We do have that, and I'll just respond. So notice was sent out. The ordinance requires 300 feet. So if you're at a quarter mile, you wouldn't have received notice.
We wouldn't,
No.
300 feet around is all you give people, right?
Oh, and then until 10 residents or property owners are notified.
So 10 people get notified and the rest of them just too bad, too sad, right?
So I'll let staff respond to it.
So the notice requirement is that everyone within 300 feet gets notice, and if there's not at least 10 people, the applicant has to provide a list that goes out in 100-foot increments until they get to at least 10.
Okay, in other words, just people within 300 feet is all you're gonna notify.
It's 300 people, but for rural areas, sometimes you don't have you don't have 10 residents within 300 feet, so the applicant has to keep going out and out and out until they get at least 10 people. So it
Okay,
could be
well,
we can certainly give you the list.
Bottom line is, nobody out there wants this to be rezoned for any less than 5 acres, and that's all I got. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Mr. Stevens. Terry Harland.
Terry Harlan, 6810 South Cimarron Road. The property that my wife and I reside on directly abuts this property. We own 11 acres. At the time that we purchased our 11 acres, we were provided 60 feet of right-of-way or easement to be able to access the 10 acres. That is the primary use of our land. And we were instructed, and we had to get a variance at that time, that with agriculture AA zoning, we had to have 150 feet of access. We were fortunate to be able to grant the variance. I guess I don't know the zoning regulations regarding RA2 zoning and what the frontage requirements are regarding that zoning as far as frontage onto Cimarron Road. I would struggle to think that 25 feet for 2.5 acres is much different, is what it is whenever we had to have 150 feet for 5 acres. No, I mean, from what I've been able to discover in talking to a longtime resident of Mustang, who's also a very prominent real estate agent in Mustang, the 2.5 or 2 acre properties that are in our particular part of the county might be there, but they were houses built in the 60s before Oklahoma City incorporated or annexed that part of the county to make it become part of Oklahoma City, and they were grandfathered in. If there are others, I'm not aware of them, and this gentleman was not aware of them either. So I'm not one that really likes to think I have the right to tell somebody how to use their land, but I would prefer, as well all of my neighbors, to keep this a minimum 5 acres, as it was in the beginning, and not have the zoning approved.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Mr. Harlan.
Thank you.
staff want to comment on the 150-foot?
Sure. He is right. In the AA district, the minimum lot frontage requirement is 150 feet. That's a zoning regulation. And they're using this process, the zoning application, to change that. They're allowing the tract on the front to be 250 feet. And then the second, the flag lot, they're allowing or asking to allow a 25-foot lot width for that tract for access. And I'll let the applicant answer, but I believe that is because they can use this process to change the zoning, but the 25-foot is a separate requirement in our subdivision regulations. Maintaining 25 feet satisfies that.
Correct, yes, I agree with that.
Okay. Jason Starks.
Thank you for allowing me to speak. I live at 7025 South Cimarron Road, and there were a few things that this gentleman stated up front to y'all that is false. One is, if you look, he compared the residences to the west as this spud district, and there is not a spud district because my property and my father's property live on that same street that goes off to the west where the pond is. My house is just to the south of the driveway, and my dad's house is to the north, which is 7001 and 7025. There is nowhere on here listed that there is a spud in this district. Also, he referred to a spud district being off of 74th Street, and those are 5-acre lots currently just to the south there. So that was a falsism. To set the record straight, this house was built originally and then caught fire. They had a long list of insurance problems, and then we build it, or you build it, bought the house to redo it. When they redid it, they listed the house at $750,000. He just listed the price of the house at $900,000. Which is total falseness. It's not in here, okay? Secondly, if you look at this whole aerial, you won't see any house that's not separated by 5 acres of land. This is not urban area. This is not, so what you're approving is a bad investment by We Build It and them trying to recover by changing this from an AA to RR? What are they trying to change it to?
RA.
RA. So you're helping a corporation make a bad investment worse by changing the whole outlook of this area right here. Thank you. Is there any questions?
Any questions?
Yeah, it looks like, I certainly appreciate the fact that there's not any spuds. And just looking at the zoning map that we've been provided from staff, I don't see any other spuds, to your point. But I do see several lots located on Southwest 74th and Cimarron Road, on the west side of Cimarron Road, that don't appear to be 5-acre lots. Are you aware of the size of those lots?
Those are over 5 acres, each one of them.
Okay, so these lots that are on the corner of Cimarron Road and 74th Street
I believe that the people that live in those residences are here, that they could speak on those.
Well, we don't have to hear from them. I was just curious because the location of the buildings in that area appear to be a lot closer than the ones that are more immediately close to this property that we're discussing the rezoning application today. So that was why I was just wanting to confirm, to your knowledge, that these are 5-acre tracts, because it doesn't appear that they are.
To my knowledge, every one of those tracts is owned by an individual that has 5 acres on those properties.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yes, sir.
Thank you.
All right, thank you. Mr. Kalita?
I'd like to address what the gentleman said there. So I wasn't referring to the SPUD, I was referring to lot size, and he actually is incorrect. I looked at the county assessor website last night, and there's 6 properties on 74th, 5 on 74th and 1 north of the tract that are all under 2 acres. There's one that's 1.69, so he actually is incorrect. If you look at the county assessor website and you see the individual tracts, there's 5 properties on Southwest 74th. In fact, I sent them an email showing them and pointing to each tract that was less than 2 acres. So That is a fact if you pull up the county assessor website. And to counter what he was saying, I wasn't talking about the SPUDs, I was talking about lot size in this area, not SPUDs. But he's correct, there's no SPUDs, but there is smaller lots than what we're requesting. So just to clarify that.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, sir.
I'm going to circle back to this one more speaker. It's Stephen Baroy. If you live on Southwest 74th Street. Stephanie, maybe? Sorry.
Hi. My address is 15201 Southwest 74th Street. I've been a resident there for years. My family grew up there. We've lived there for a long, long time. We just want to keep it one home per 5 acres, agriculture. People move out there because it's peaceful and quiet. It's just a sense, that's what it's been for years. I have about 60 petitions total we received from residents there that also have the same feeling. So, thank you for listening and hearing us out.
All right, thank you. All right, Commissioner Meek. You can come up to the podium, provide your name and address, and if you haven't filled out a form, please do so.
My name's Bob Shelton. I live at 15715 Southwest 74th. Sorry, I'm a little nervous, but anyhow. The 1.69 acres you're talking about, that's mine. My house sits on 3 lots, 1.69, 5 acres, 5 acres, but it's all connected together. I only got to build there because I owned over 5 acres. And Jason explained it pretty well. This is just corporate greed. He didn't get the money he wanted out of the first house, so he's trying to get money for the second lot, try to make up for the deal. Mr. Meeks, I hope you understand that this is nothing but 5 acres out there. I've lived there for my whole life, 49 years, and it's 5 acre tracts. My neighbor was his property was going up for some sheriff's auction. I said I wanted to buy it and split it because he has nice barns in the back. I was told that I could not split that. He said, you have to be required to have 5 acres to live out there. Every lot around there is at least 5 acres. And if y'all do this, if y'all pass this, you're opening a can of worms that everybody that's got 5 acres might want to just say, hey, I'll just sell the 2.5 in the back so I can pay for part of my mortgage. And you'll be opening a can of worms that we don't want. We don't want this out there. This is not what we bought land for. And I pray that you guys don't have this around. Y'all probably have nice houses. Y'all wouldn't want this in y'all's backyard, so don't bring it to ours. That's all I got to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
All righty.
One last thing, just to counter that. The tract to the north, that has a similar setup. Directly north of the tract, there's a home behind the existing home, so it's already been done. So it's not like we're doing anything that hasn't already been done. So just for clarification on that, thank you.
Right. It's.
Now,
My wife filled out the form initially.
all right, we're about to move on. So go ahead. You can come up and speak.
I live at 6900 South Cimarron Road. My name is Stephen DeForest. We are the 5 acres adjacent to it. The right-of-way he is speaking of for the property in the back has already spoke. He is the one that already had the issue with the footage to get to the back of his property and then handled it properly, didn't rezone everything to do it. As they've all said, we all want our 5 acre lots. We've all abided by that. I have to agree that they sunk more into this property than they got out, and they're looking for a bailout. They put the house for sale, couldn't get it sold, now have renters in it, and are trying to get some more money out of the property. I understand that, but we shouldn't change the zoning to bail them out.
All right, thank you. You can give your form to Elena here, or Jared. Thank you. All right, Commissioner Meek.
I appreciate everything you guys have said. I've only been on the commission a little over a year. Ward 3 is a crazy area, and the 5 acre tracts, they're changing into neighborhoods. There's people that have neighbors selling to developers, and you won't even know it until you get a notice, and all of a sudden, 4 or 5 acre tracts are becoming 450 homes. This case is one home. I don't care who it's for. I know nothing about the backstory on this, but there is a process for doing what they're asking to do, and it's called a spud. And we sit here and hear many of them every planning commission meeting. What we try to do is put guardrails on things. To speak to the one gentleman that had the frontage question, with the recommended approval, I wasn't okay with it without putting a TE on it that little 25-foot gap has to be only for driveway, can't be for anything else. I don't believe that new house that is being built and sold or rented is going away. Nothing changes this spud that they can do anything more than 2 houses. I have to sit here and listen to crowds of people that have been there for 30, 40 years that are getting 400 and 500 houses planted beside them. That's when traffic and water and real issues come to bear, and everything's moving out our way. As you can see today, all the cases I've had. And if you want to hang around, a couple more interesting ones coming up right after you guys. So, commissioners, any thoughts, comments regarding this case that you guys see?
I think I just want to, regardless of where the planning commission is, I think, one, we all care about the character of all of the neighborhoods throughout all of Oklahoma City.
Right.
But it is important for all of our neighbors to understand that it is always the right of the property owner to request changes to their zoning. We, as the planning commission, do not have the authority to prevent a property owner from exercising their right to want to rezone their property. And there's nothing that any neighbor can do to stop a property owner from wanting to do that. So I understand that it can also be scary and maybe even offensive to some people that a rezoning request may come, but that is a property owner's right, and it's our job to make the decision of whether or not it's consistent with the comprehensive plan or not. So I just want to be clear that we do our best to respect the character of neighborhoods. We know that our neighbors do a great job trying to maintain their property and love and care about their property just like we do.
Right.
But we also have to respect the rights of property owners to exercise fully their right to use their property to their own enjoyment. So I just think it's a difficult balance that we have to strike, but it's important for everyone to understand what the rights of everyone involved.
It is, and I want to be honest with you guys. I called the applicant. I spoke to him. I wanted the modular home removed. I wanted to make sure we had the driveway only issue. I wanted to make sure it wasn't more than 2 houses. I drove this area, and I imagined that house sitting on 2.5 acres behind it, and looked at all the stuff around it, and houses are set back and forth at different areas. I don't think it's gonna give you heartburn every time if they build a nice house back there, that you're not gonna notice any character change in your area. A neighborhood you would. This is not a neighborhood. And like Commissioner Pennington said, we look at a case-by-case basis on spuds. These spuds come in all the time to split a larger lot size into multiple smaller ones. And this one, I think, could have been way worse, to be honest with you guys. I mean, they could have been putting this drive down there and asking for 5 1-acre lots or 4, a mixture of 4. They've only asked for 1. The guardrails are on there. They can't do anything more than that. So with that being said, and I'm just one vote. So with that being said, I'd like to recommend approval of SPUD 1654 with ATE added, that the 25-foot access has to be limited to 1 track, and it can only be for a driveway.
So I have a motion from Commissioner Meek to recommend approval of item SPUD 1654, subject to the added TE. Do we have a second for that motion? been seconded by Commissioner Noble. Please cast your votes. And that item passes. Thank you. I will mention for the neighbors, that is a recommendation that goes forth to City Council in about 6 weeks. So you feel free to reach out to your councilman and share your concerns. Item 18.
Item 18 is PUD 2006, an application to rezone 8901 South Anderson Road from the AA and AE Airport Environment Zone 2 overlay districts to PUD 2006 with the AE2 overlay.
Good afternoon, David Box, here on behalf of the applicant. This is an item that was deferred multiple times, as you can see from the front of your staff report. Beginning in April, it was set to come before you. At the time, staff had a recommendation of denial, or in the alternative, approval with a series of modifications to the PUD. So we went back to the drawing board, redesigned it, had meetings with the council person, met with Commissioner Privet, and so what we've now come back with is a modified version of what we came with. We have accepted all the conditions the staff had in their alternate recommendation of approval. And so what you see now is a recommendation for approval with no technical evaluations. And so we have a total of 79 lots on 166 acres. And so what you see here is representative of what you'll see in a plat. The minimum lot size is now 1.5 acres. Some of them are well over 2 acres, but nothing is less than 1.5 acres. If you'll recall, we were at 1 acre, or some of them even less than 1 acre at the time. Now we have an application compliant with the comprehensive plan. If you were to zoom out on the zoning map, you'd see other RA developments in the area. RA, of course, allows 1 acre, and even in some instances, less than 1 acre. So at 1.5 acres, we believe now that we're fully compliant. So with that, again, no TEs. Happy to answer any questions.
All right. Commissioner Privet, this is Ward 4.
Lead into this one with that last case. I'm still not totally thrilled, but 1.5 acres is a lot better than 1 and less for now. I'm sure we got plenty of people signed up to speak, so.
We do have
might hear from
4
them.
signed up to speak.
Okay.
So.
Was it just the map says it's probably going to be no less than 1.5 acre, or you've written it in, it's a minimum of 1.5 for sure?
We can. We've written it in as a density calculation, which is what staff's recommendation was. We can put minimum of 1.5, but what staff had recommended was a density calculation over the total acreage of 0.5.
Got it, but a density calculation would be an average, and so you could have some that are half an acre.
We can add,
okay,
yeah,
so
like I said, it's,
making sure it's a minimum.
we can add a TE to make it minimum 1.5.
All right, let's do that, David.
Sure.
All right, you ready to
Yeah,
hear from those signed up? Mr. Herbert Schatz?
Herbert Schultz. I actually live in Choctaw, 14390 Eagle Nest, Choctaw. But I own 30 acres across 89th on the south side there. I'm mainly here to support the people that lives are going to be drastically changed out there. And also for sentimental and wildlife issues. We used to own all that land, and I know how much wildlife there is out there, and I just wanted to come say I don't think it's a good idea, but mainly wanted to support the people whose lives are going to be changed.
Thank you. Rhonda Hummel.
Rhonda Hummel, 8300 South Anderson Road. I didn't come with any kind of prepared speech today. I just wanted to kind of speak from the heart.
Do you mind pulling that microphone just a little toward you? There you go. Thank you.
I've lived there my entire life. Moved there in 1980. It's a family piece of land across the street. I'm really concerned as a citizen what's going to happen to this area. A lot of it has to do with water access. We know there's not any furnished plumbing, sewage, anything like that. The idea of plopping down multiple wells in this area really concerns me about long-term water supply. Waste, sewage, obviously an issue. You can't appreciate it from this map, but this is a bowl, basically. That area adjacent to Anderson is very low and floods pretty much with a medium or heavy rain repeatedly, sometimes to the point of going over the road. I am very concerned about what's going to happen there and what will mushroom from it. You know, the people who live there, just like the case before this on Cimarron, moved there for peace and quiet. They wanted open spaces. They wanted to have their own little version of serenity, you know, sanity, tranquility, to come to this place and have some space to plant a garden or whatever they want to do. Putting a neighborhood in there counters all of that. A neighborhood in this area doesn't make sense. There's just so many things that it's going to create, I think, problems with, not to mention the flooding issues. Pollution is more than just plastic bags and paper blowing around. It's light pollution, it's sound pollution. You know, people come out there to be in the peace and quiet, and I do worry about that a lot. I've thought about this for a lot of time since I heard about it back in April, and I would like to propose an alternative. You know, break this into 20 to 40 acre sections. That's what's basically in that area. Break it into even parts or not even parts to divide it up into bigger sections so you're not depleting so much water, you're not producing so much waste. I think that makes a lot of sense because that's the layout of those areas. I have 10 and 20 acre sections next to me. And so I appreciate your time. I hope that you think about this, and it's the same problem, and it's echoed from probably many of these cases, just like the one before it. You know, people move to these areas for a reason, but then their peace gets invaded because of a piece of land being sold. So thank you for your time.
Thank you for coming down.
Any questions for me?
No.
Thank you.
Thank you. Dal Campbell.
It's the first time I've ever come to this operation here, but
Welcome.
the reason is because the entry and exit, they only have one. And on the first one, they were gonna dump out 96 houses right in my driveway. Right there. I mean, I own 22 acres, Schultz owns 30, and there's some other people. It's really nice and peaceful out there. You can only imagine. And if they put an entry and exit right here, this is on a hill that goes across this bottom. There's no houses because it's in floodplain, heavy floodplain. That's the Hog Creek bottom. And it floods a lot. It completely closes the road. I was down there when they took out the 2 tin horns. It was like 2 squished about 3 feet. Really, and I went down and talked to them. I said, you're just making this a temporary road, the 89th Street, right here. Anyway, so one of the ladies said that there's gonna be another entry and exit from this development over to Anderson. They're gonna have to go across that floodplain, but they can do that because they did it here and they do it here. This is all floodplain. And then over here, a couple of places, right, Westminster and 89. So it's gonna be a nightmare. And right here is gonna be Killer Hill. There's a bridge out there off of 149th and Douglas that was sitting like this. I was a policeman for 25 years. There were 10 people killed on that bridge until they finally put another one in. This same thing's gonna be here. It's not, if somebody crashes, it's just almost daily, I bet, because it's so I don't know how they're gonna do it, I really don't. Maybe they can figure it out. But anyway, long story short, hopefully they'll get another entry and exit to this property. And now I see that they're gonna drop the how many houses is gonna be on there. It's gonna be a mess, you folks. I mean, I rode that area and rode tickets on that street for 25 years, so, as a policeman. But it's gonna be something else for y'all, because I'll be dead, I'll be 71 time they get that developed. I probably won't even be here. But anyway, long story short, good luck on it if y'all decide to go ahead and let them do that. And so, that's all.
Thank you,
Any
Mr. Campbell.
questions?
Any questions for Mr. Campbell? No? All right, thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Randy Taylor?
My name's Randy Taylor. I live at 7801 South Anderson Road. I am directly adjacent and upstream from this development. I would like to thank, before I forget about it, Ms. Welch for sending me some information. I very much appreciate that. If I may approach the bench, and I would like to pass out some information. Good decisions are based on good information. And I'd like to try and study what the changes are out of the Southeast Sector Plan, which I found out was no good. I am very frustrated in trying to print out the new plan, which the city proposed. I have my son and daughter. I'm not a computer person, okay? I went out and broke my body in sweat and work. If I could, I'd like to show you what I had to put up with, and I can't even read this when I tried to print this off the city, because I was trying to come in here to speak intelligently, not about just what I know and my work experience. So if I may approach Mr. LaForge, and he can pass this around, he can show, there's the cover page, and he can show how it prints out and how hard it was to read. I thought it would be advantageous to let you know what my work experience is and how it relates to this. I worked for a ready-mix and mining company for several years. I did materials exploration. I was qualified by the Oklahoma Ready-Mix Concrete Association to do level testing on materials, including concrete. I did surveying, I did drafting, I did cartography, I did lease reviews, and much, much more. My permitting involvement with this company included national, state, county, and city levels. I did U.S. Army Corps of Engineers permitting. I have contacted the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers, and I will correct my neighbors. This is much more than a floodplain. How many members are familiar with what a floodway is? May I see a show of hands? Okay, if you don't know what a floodway is, it is basically if you've driven over a bridge and you've seen it flooded, and you see the flow of water, that is a floodway, okay? The areas out to the side are the 100-year and the 500-year floodplain. You are not allowed to build in those areas unless you, in the 100-year or the 500-year, it's been a while since I've been out this, so I apologize, but you're not allowed to build in those areas unless the BFE, which is called the base flood elevation, is 1 foot above that. Whenever, and it's been many years, things may have changed, but when I left, I was trying to permit a piece of property, and it was in the floodway. I was even restricted from the type of fence that I can put in. What you're looking at up here on the floodplain map is mainly floodway. Okay, that is where your water is flowing. The floodway backs up to the north on my property. Over Anderson Road is even a floodway. That means the water flows over the top of the road becomes unusable. Okay? I also spent 1.5 years in construction inspection for a municipality. I inspected city improvements or projects that would become involved that would be submitted to the city for their maintenance, including subdivisions where they put in roads, sewers, drainage, and that type of thing. I worked in stormwater, also dealing with household hazardous waste. I preferred public education to enforcement. Unfortunately, some people don't learn too well. The area of drainage is massive, is absolutely massive. This map does not begin to show the area of drainage that hits that area. It goes all the way north of I-40. The city has since approved 2 housing additions that are not even shown on the most recent study of the floodway. Again, you cannot build in the floodway. You can go in and dig it out and do some different things. But this is floodway, okay? My property has floodway on it.
30 seconds.
Pardon?
We're almost up, your time is almost up.
Oh, great.
Yeah, sorry.
I have, good Lord.
Wrap it up in 30 seconds, please.
Okay, short. I called in complaint, Fields and 74th. It's washed out 11 feet underneath it. I got a notice from the city, it's fixed. I went out there yesterday, stuck a surveying rod underneath there. It's still washed out 11 feet. The city came out to fix a hump in the road, or a pothole. They made a dadgum jump. It would take my trailer and bounce it completely off the ground at 30 miles an hour. Douglas Boulevard, y'all are familiar with Douglas, how busy it is. It's washed out under Douglas Boulevard for 1.5 feet. Douglas Boulevard isn't important to Oklahoma City, is it? It just fronts Tinker. You know what they did? They did nothing. They did nothing. I went back out there and checked, called it in. They come back, put up cones. I can go on and on. I can talk about the floodway, the floodplain. I don't want them backing water up on me. The housing, we used to have 5 acres, as one gentleman said. And if you go into the executive summary, you'll talk about the Dust Bowl days, you'll talk about trees, you'll talk about, you've got an area that is of significance and minimal coverage area since Oklahoma City has expanded. We have no water, we have no sewer, and I have questions about drawdowns on the wells. I went through this with the development on Southeast 59th and Choctaw Road, and I mentioned the wells.
All right, Mr. Taylor, your 5 minutes are
Okay.
up, so I hate to cut you off, but.
What do I do to get more time, talk to somebody? I have a lot of questions and a lot of problems.
We have, so you're happy to visit with the applicant. We also have public works staff here if you want to hang around afterward. They'd be happy to answer any questions that you have.
I would love to come back and hang around with him. I am here missing a funeral of a good friend of mine. I plan to go to the gravesite. I will come back at a later time, if that's possible.
We can just get contact information, so you don't have to come all the way down here if you want to just put in a phone call.
I will put in a phone call, but I will come down. I find it more advantageous to meet face to face.
Okay, very good. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I do want to point out, just for the benefit of the neighbors, is this is an initial step to set the zoning for the property and what can be. It's not a detailed. We're not approving detailed engineering plans and calculations. And I would like to ask Mr. Lodge. We haven't heard from him today. If you could just come up and kind of give, for the benefit of the neighbors, give a brief overview of, after today, if depending on the decisions that are made, what is Public Works process for approving the development as far as construction and engineering?
Barry Lodge, Public Works. So if the zoning application is approved today, they'll have several steps they go through. First, because of the number of lots, they'll have to come back with a preliminary plat, and that comes through this body as well. After that approval is granted, then if they want to do this all in one phase, if it comes in as phased construction, they will prepare a final plat that's submitted to planning for review. It will go through Public Works. It'll come through our technical review section. As part of that final plat, they will also turn in their paving and drainage plans, which may include, depending on what they decide to do, a flood study of this portion of Hog Creek. That is a mapped FEMA floodplain, so that flood study does exist, along with the USGS urbanized study that was done for the city of Oklahoma City that establishes finished floor elevations essentially for fully developed conditions in Hog Creek. We will review those plans as they come in for compliance with Chapter 16 of the drainage ordinance, which is specified in the PUD as well as in the comments of the staff report that they have to comply with that. I stress that because that's our authority from the Public Works side is Chapter 16 of the municipal code. It's not going to restrict them from developing. That's a whole nother issue that comes through Planning Commission and Council approval, but that's what we will be reviewing for to make sure that they comply with that ordinance.
All right.
Mr. Chair, could I have some clarifications for Mr. Lodge? I've been on the commission too long to not know this, but within our staff report, what I see under Public Works, under storm sewer availability, you were saying we may do this, we may do that, but I see here a flood and/or drainage study will be required. Next, number 4, flood study will be required to show certain things. And then a floodplain activity permit must be submitted. Some of that is it absolutely will be required and it must happen. What you were saying was sort of we might get a study and we might look at it. I thought it was by gosh, they can't move forward without that.
Well, they are adjacent to this floodplain. A study is required, but there has been one prepared. Okay, when the FEMA maps were done, and this is back in 1976, 1978, that creek was studied, and so the flood study was done. That's what established this mapped FEMA floodplain and the mapped floodway. That came from that drainage study. After that was done in 1983, the city commissioned USGS to do an additional study because when FEMA studies these creeks, they do it based on the current level of development, which out in this area was essentially none. USGS came in and applied urbanization factors to the study that FEMA had done to look at what the effects of development in the drainage basin would be. Based on that study, they came up with new elevations. The mapped floodplain is still based on the official FEMA map. But when we come in and look at the development, we're going to look at the elevations as far as how that will affect the structures that are constructed in the area for the finished floors. So there is a flood study. Some of these, the comments that are on the staff report as we go through those are a boilerplate comment. We're adjacent to a creek. We're adjacent to this flood plain. That's not to imply that a new study of that creek will be required because there is one that's available.
Okay, thank you for that. And I know Mr. Taylor's wanting to come up and educate me more on flood plains and floodways, but here's part of my point to that is they require certain things, they look at certain things. That is a later stage. If we are to approve this, I get comfort that people that know a lot more than myself and the rest of this commission understand floodplains and floodways more than we have time for you to educate us. We trust the city to not allow, I believe, the next steps of this development to happen unless the flood issues are taken care of. I can't make that decision right now. You could be up here for the rest of the day and I still can't make that decision. So as I understand it, unless any of my fellow commissioners, chairman, correct me if I'm wrong, I end up approving these based on, I listen to the flood concerns, but unless I think the city's missing it somehow, I'm moving forward.
Can I have 30 seconds?
Anyway, and trusting the city on the flood.
I'm sorry, you've had your 5 minutes. We need to give the applicant some time to respond to some of the concerns that we heard.
Yeah.
So we heard about entrances, exits, flood, water, sewage. So you have any responses to any of those items?
Yeah, so when we plat it, we'll have to meet subregs. The subregs dictate access points, how many lots can be on access points. When we come through with the plat, we'll have to show you why and how we meet the subregs to satisfy the access requirements. We will have private water, we will have private sewer. When you think of the concerns that we typically hear with private sewer, it's on half-acre and 1 acre lots sometimes, not an acre and a half. The reason staff recommends approval, if we look back to the comp plan, what really guides our density discussion, this is not rural low, this is rural medium. And so in the comment section where staff is describing this, they tell you that the 0.5 dwelling units per acre is consistent with the rural medium LUDA. Again, the one comment in there is that we don't commit to an acre and a half as a minimum lot size. We're willing to add that TE to do it. If you look at this, what you'll see is that we have respected the floodplain and the floodway, and we've stayed out of it. You cannot spend the money necessary with engineers at this stage without some element of entitlements, knowing that the very expensive engineering reports are going to be worth something. So once we get entitlements through zoning, we can then release engineers to show what the flood elevation is, what the floodplain does, what the floodway does. And then we turn that over to Mr. Lodge and his staff, and only then are we ever granted permission to build. As Barry said, this is not the end of the story. Frankly, this isn't even really the beginning. When we go through city council, if we were to get approval, there's multiple rounds then of platting. Preliminary plat, which notice will be given, and then final plats where notice will be given. That's where the details of all of those concerns are really flushed out, and we have to show how we meet all of those concerns. So at the zoning phase, we're really talking about density, intensity, and what we're guided by is the comprehensive plan. And here, based upon the modifications we've made, we are squarely within that rural medium LUDA.
All right, thank you. No, I'm sorry, sir. So, ma'am, the public speaking portion's over. Yep, we're into our commissioner comments.
I'm wondering if staff can shed any light on the impact, if any, of the AE2 overlay.
The AE2 overlay has some restrictions. Now, this is Tinker's. It's not our municipal airport, so we don't seek a navigation easement from the city of Oklahoma City, but there are some noise attenuation requirements for residential uses within the AE2, and otherwise there'll be some height restrictions which they would not be, this PUD would not reach the threshold that would affect Tinker's height restrictions.
AE1 wouldn't be allowed, right?
In AE1, residential uses are not allowed.
Right.
In AE2, residential uses have some additional noise attenuation requirements that they have to meet.
Anything else?
I'm more concerned with the water quality and the table, stuff like that, than I am with the drainage. We've talked about it. I deal with low Mars and low Miz all day, every day, and FEMA flood maps and AEs and floodways. So you're glutton for punishment if you're going to try to build within the AE and you get flooded and something actually happens and you're pretty much liable, or you have a requirement for flood insurance. So, but like I said, my concern was mainly the no sewer, no water. I asked the applicant to at least get to acre and a half. And I'm more or less, on the fence, okay with that. Not really, but I feel it's a good compromise for the area. But I know a lot of people aren't going to agree with that, so I can live with it. But that's my comment.
I think, I didn't speak out about this on our last application because, as Commissioner Mink pointed out, we're really talking about, one house. I do think that the commission ought to give some serious consideration to whether, we have a commitment or not to the preservation of a rural lifestyle within Oklahoma City. Talk about the thin end of the wedge. This is a neighborhood that's being proposed in an area that is basically a rural area. And I have some real hesitancy about that. It's kind of been pared down, and I appreciate all the work that's gone into doing that because I know it's been significant. It's been pared down to sort of the basic, from our standpoint, minimum that it can be, from their point, this basic maximum that it can be within the constraints that have been imposed. But even at this level of density, I mean, it will make an enormous difference in this area, and that's just a fact. So, you know, this is a tough vote for me, I will say. I think that there is a place for rural property within Oklahoma City. It's not all just there waiting to be zoned into neighborhoods, you know. And I think that just like other neighborhoods, you know, in the city, they have every right to expect the respect for their lifestyle, you know, that we afford to others, so.
What I would say to that is the comprehensive plan is what really kind of dictated that, because we have two different categories of rural. We have the low, where it's 5 acres plus, and then you have the rural medium. And so it was the comprehensive plan that really dictated density. And if you were to zoom out on this map, you would see multiple RA developments that exist. And RA, of course, allows you to go to less than an acre. And so we believe that based upon what exists in the comprehensive plan, that this was a reasonable solution.
And also I'll point out the latest flood study was in 2009. So it's a little more recent than 70s, which is good.
I'll jump in and say that I agree. This is the area I grew up on. Married my wife, who grew up right there across from this addition on Anderson. But I also don't know if I've drank the Kool-Aid, because our rural area out in Ward 3 is under assault, and it all used to be trees and farms and like this. I live on a half acre with an aerobic system, and I agree that should not be allowed anymore. Someone builds a pool, sneakily moves their couple of heads to spray out on common area or on their neighbor's lot. There's not enough room. When you look at an addition that's willing to commit to 1.5 acres, it's still pretty rural to me.
I'm always uncomfortable with these, and for lot size on well and sewer, and no sewer. This one I felt better about because they were 1.5 acre, not 1 acre or less, and that was where I was on it. But somehow we need to come together of Commissioner Powers' point about the neighborhood character. I think is an equally important thing to consider on these. Again, the same thing on the last one. It was one house. That was okay to me, but 1.5 acre I feel is in a comfortable margin, but I don't disagree with the neighborhood character and change.
All right. Do we just need to see where we're at?
We can. I just say this, that it's 1.25 miles away from a major highway, I-240. There's density really surrounding it. There's some R1 right next to it. There's RA. There's more density than they're asking for. I think it's a good compromise. The amount of floodplain through here is going to dictate how many houses they can have. We're looking at pretty pictures, but we're just starting the zoning process. This is going to go to council. Go straight to your council person and voice your concerns, and let the process be what the process is.
Could I add something too? Few of us said the word compromise. I think what, in this particular case, the neighbors might not recognize is sometimes this starts at 0.8 acres, and we argue and we complain, and it's even more full, and we've eventually, I think this applicant more quickly than usual went ahead and got to what you're hearing us say is the right balance. They got to that 1.5 acre or above already without more gnashing of teeth than necessary. Everything else y'all said is why I'm getting there. It's a tough one, but it ended up being the right balance because of the 1.5 acre minimum. And y'all didn't see how quickly they got to that agreement, I guess.
Commissioner Privet?
Yeah, I agree with that if you don't count all the continuances, but hey. But yeah, still.
All right, maybe I just didn't see it. I wasn't at the meetings, but
Right.
when this came out that quick.
Are we ready for a motion?
Yeah, I'll go ahead and make a motion and see where we're at. I'll make a motion to recommend approval on, where we at? What's my case number? No, I'm signed out. 18, where are we? PUD 2006.
Adding the TE.
Adding the TE of 1.5 acre minimum.
All right, so we have a motion from Commissioner Privet to recommend to City Council of approval of PUD 2006, subject to the technical evaluation that all lots shall be a minimum of 1.5 acres in size. Do we have a second?
I'm logged out. You did? Okay. Well, mine didn't. There it is. Got it now.
All right, that's been seconded by Commissioner LaForge. Please cast your votes. And that goes forth to City Council with a recommendation of approval. So for our neighbors, that'll be looking on City Council agenda in roughly 6 weeks, and reach out to your councilman and share your concerns with him. Next is item 19.
Item 19 is PUD 2024, an application to rezone 11001 North Coltrane Road from the AA District to PUD 2024.
Once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive. Here on behalf of the applicant, Mr. Pat Garrett, who's with us, Mark Zitzow, also here, and they are the civil on the project. So what we have before you is a duplex development, and Mark has presented an exhibit here that I want to walk through because we have an area that is a fairly unique part of town. And the reason I say that, here you see the blue is us. Everything you see in green right here is owned by Frontier City. So you have Frontier City itself to our east. They own what's kind of like a large parking lot to our northeast. To our north is not them, but it's an undeveloped strip of land. And then to our south, again, owned by Frontier City, kind of serves as storage or a boneyard for, I guess, parts and former rides. Then, if you look here, what you'll see is a single-family development in this kind of, I'm going to say magenta shade, that are 6,000 square foot lots. The orange is a duplex development that is similar density as what we have. The yellow right here is a mobile home park, and a brand new application that was approved that Mark missed here. This is actually a multifamily development that I've represented here. And so I only say that, I'm not sure if anyone's here, but if in terms of density, we're around 10 dwelling units an acre, which when you look at kind of everything around us is in keeping with many developments that have been approved recently. So here is a description of the product. Do you have the site plan, electronic? Here's the product that we seek to build, and there is the site plan. So it's a unique style of development similar to what Muirfield Village and others have done. And so because of that, there are some TEs that we're not going to be able to agree to, but we do want to suggest some modifications. I'll start by saying we agree to TE5, so that'll be the easiest one. On TE4, we would ask to strike that. This will be a private gated neighborhood. So oftentimes when you have that, you don't provide the stubs to the north and the south or surrounding properties. On 3, we would ask to modify it to add the words "or private drives." On the side yard setbacks, the base zoning district is 5 feet. We're asking for 3 feet. And on the minimum lot size, we are slightly under. And so because we have this very specific product type and development style, we would ask to keep what we have in the SPUD, which is about 4,800 square feet. So with that, happy to answer any questions. We think it's an exciting product. It's close proximity to obviously I-35, a lot of easy access to many parts of the city, and we're happy to answer any questions.
Commissioner Pennington, this is Ward 7.
Thank you. I have met with the applicant. I do have just a couple, just want to clarify where we are on, where you are on the TEs.
Yep.
We're saying we're keeping 5. We're saying you don't want connections to the north and the south. I understand why we wouldn't want the south because that is industrial currently. But you don't want the north because you want it to be a private.
Yeah, this is going to be a gated community.
And then why not, are you going to build the streets to city standards?
So what we're asking for is private drives is the way that we're going to develop this, which is similar to, if you're familiar with, we didn't have the opportunity to
talk about that,
to
but-
show you Zoom.
Yeah.
There is a development style similar to this called Muirfield Village. There's a few of them in, one of them may be in your ward, east of Fairview Farms. It's Bill Roberts is the developer. Very small lots, very short distance between houses. Because of that, almost all of them are served by private drives.
Gotcha. That always gives me pause, because I'm always worried about eventually the city needing to take over public streets, needing to make them into public streets. That is a concern of mine.
Well, I mean, like I said, this is, we're confident that the way that the numbers work, because it'll be gated, that the HOA will be adequately funded. So we're not worried about it. This is a development style that has seen success in multiple parts of the city, so we're confident in it.
So let's talk about the, and then the minimum lot size, you just want it to be 4,800 square feet.
Yes, sir.
I don't have any objection to again, you all know, this has been a long-running discussion that we have had about the public drives versus private, that whole concern. I'm comforted by the fact that it is gated, so we obviously know that it's limited access, and it'll be clear that it's like, this is not public. But that is, I'm curious to hear where the rest of the commission is, but that is, I'm also less concerned about the connectivity in this instance, given the character of this particular area. I think it makes a lot of sense. My guess is that the area, if the area to the north was made any more dense, the neighbors just north of that will not be happy. And so we're going to be in one of those arguments where they're going to be asking for giant lots anyway to make that parcel work. So, I mean, I visited with the applicant and voiced my support then. I'm a little worried about the private drives, but comforted by the fact that it's going to be gated, but curious to hear where the rest of the commission is. Other thoughts?
I share your concern about the private drive. For me, it's more about the affordability for purchasers. And you can, go with the buyer beware thing, but, over time, HOAs, I think, tend to focus on problems and not so much on things that don't seem like a problem until they are. I think, you build up a reserve in an HOA fund, and it's like, why have we got all this money? Let's throw a big part here, whatever. And then suddenly it's like, oh,
So you won't be able to do it.
There's a giant hole in the street. What are we going to do about that? That's more my concern, just about the affordability of it. I'm pretty confident that the city is well armored against the idea that it's going to need to take over these streets someday. I don't see that happening, but that doesn't mean that the people who live there 10 years from now, 15 years from now, don't think that they're going to, if it gets to be a problem. So it's an issue, I think, but the density doesn't concern me.
Yeah, it doesn't. That's not a problem. Do we have anybody signed up to speak?
We do have two
Okay.
signed up, yeah. Ms. Joyce Brown?
Actually, we prefer that I go first, if that's okay.
Okay, certainly. Holman, Mr. Holman?
Yes, my name's Landon Holman, and I live at 12124 Old Mill Road, which is within the Stone Mill addition, which is north and slightly west of this application. And I didn't know that my good friend Pat was the developer here, but I still feel like I need to speak today. And I appreciate the opportunity to do so. Our neighborhood has several concerns about this development, and I'm only going to address 5 of those today. The planned 92 units, first of all, on 8.98 acres seems extremely dense for that size area. And the planned side lot building setbacks of 3 feet and front and back building setbacks of only 10 feet are not enough to create a good living environment for the residents, in our opinion. Also, the plans for pervious driveways set a low standard of quality and creates what will most certainly result in road repairs. We talked about private roads and public roads, and they would become liable for those maintenance problems. The fourth thing that we need to think about is fire safety. Fire trucks would have a very difficult time navigating the 26-foot arterial street, and most especially the secondary street, which is only 20 foot wide and segmented into 6 sections. And each segment has 2 dead ends, which is a total of 12 dead ends. This creates a fire hazard for a dense wooded area, which is also part of the Cross Timbers Forest. As some of you may recall, not too long ago, we had encroaching fires in that vicinity that caused a lot of the surrounding residents to evacuate. We were one of them. So it is possible that you're going to have, not because of the development, but you need to make sure that you're open enough for access in and out of the neighborhood for fire trucks and other trucks. The other thing is traffic security concerns. This development will create too much traffic entering into an already dangerous road on Coltrane. It has very deep bar ditches on both sides of the street, and the entrance to this project is nearly right across the street from the park, the Frontier Cities parking lot, which exits onto Coltrane, and it gets pretty heavy in the evening time, so we think that might be a concern. There have been several car accidents on this road, a lot of which have resulted in fatalities. So finally, we're just not sure this planned development is appropriate for the area, and we would ask that the application be denied. Thank you.
All right, thank you for your time, Mr. Holman.
Could I ask him a few questions?
Sure.
If that's okay? And I apologize, could I get your name one more time?
Sure. Landon Holman, Holman.
Excellent. Mr. Holman, a few questions for you.
Sure.
One, did you know that in the staff report it says that fire suppression is required? So they'll be required to have fire suppression to that point.
Okay, good.
And you are aware that the intention, you might have heard our back and forth about this, because I was also concerned about streets and the quality of those streets. You heard our back and forth that this is actually going to be a gated community. So their intention is to make it.
So it'll be private.
It'll be private, it's to be protected, that whole thing.
Right.
Your other comment about impervious paving, it is always the goal of Oklahoma City, consistent with our comprehensive plan, to make it so that there's better drainage of water and a better flow back into the ground. And so that's the reason for the request for the impervious paving is more consistent with what we try to do with our plan.
Is that to prevent the runoff then, so it can soak in?
It's better for it to soak in.
All
That's
right.
the intention. Impervious.
Well,
Okay, I was getting, yeah. Sorry, pervious.
That would
Sorry,
be
thank
impervious.
you. I need the architect to keep me in line. Thank you.
Understand, as similar to permeable. Okay.
So those were the things that were on my mind of concern. So I appreciate you taking the time. And then, so it sounds like the things that directly would impact you, you're concerned by the potentiality of there being increased traffic.
That's probably the primary concern. It's there's a new development northeast that's got about 200 homes, and that's adding to a lot of stress on Coltrane. And I think this will add to that.
Okay. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. Ms. Brown?
Hello, my name is Joyce Brown. I live at 16609 Kingsley Road. I have worked with the developer of Stone Mill for the last 20 years. I served on the Stone Mill HOA board for over 15, and I currently serve on the Stone Mill Manor board, which abuts to Stone Mill and is, I would say, the sister neighborhood to Stone Mill. I've spoken to a number of the residents in Stone Mill and almost all of the residents in Stone Mill Manor. They have the same concerns as Mr. Holman voiced. I would like to go back to the thought of fire safety because I've worked with a developer so long. I've heard a lot of conversations and working with the same engineer actually that's doing this project. The turn radius is an issue, even if you have fire hydrants. They have to connect to the fire hydrants. And when you have 12 dead ends in one 8.9-foot acre project, that's a problem, especially when it's surrounded by wooded area, and it is the Cross Timbers forest. It is a forest, and I think That needs to be considered as well. There's a lot of wildlife. We provide a lot of wildlife refuge at the 13-acre nature park in Stone Mill, and that takes a lot of dedication. Also, forethought from the developer who had the idea of developing such a neighborhood in this location. I understand that people want density, but I would also like to highlight in that line of thought kind of a comparison, to draw a picture of a comparison of this development to Stone Mill in terms of density and its location. What Mr. Box didn't say is that Stone Mill is 330 feet away from this neighborhood that is proposed. I looked it up this morning. Tom Brady couldn't quite throw a football that far, but he'd come close. That's how close we are. Stone Mill has 98 lots. Each averages about 0.8 of an acre on 110 acres, okay? So a total of possible 98 dwellings on 110 acres. As compared to this project, which the PUD states they want 92 dwellings and 8.98 acres. So 330 feet away, a project with 98 dwellings on 110 acres and a development with 92 dwellings on 8.98 acres. It doesn't make sense. There's no transition space. It's just much too high a density for the area. We would have more people here, but we thought this was going to be on the 22nd, so we just found out yesterday that it's today. We're also transitioning to a new board, so we weren't able to get all the ducks in line for this. So, as a member of the board of Stone Mill Manor, I would like to speak on behalf of them and ask that you deny this PUD, or at the very least, offer a continuance. Oh, I also wanted to say, I wanted to bring focus to their PUD 6.1 development and subdivision variations. That apparently was important in another project that Mr. Box is representing, to follow those regulations. But in 6.1, the way I'm understanding this is the R2 zoning, medium-low density, it says has a minimum lot size of 6,000 square feet. This PUD proposes a minimum lot size of 4,800 square feet. I don't understand that. It also says it establishes a front yard setback of 25 feet. This PUD proposes a front yard setback of 10 feet. I don't understand that. It also says it establishes a side yard setback of 5 feet. This PUD proposes a side yard setback of 3 feet. It doesn't make sense to me. The location and the project, the zoning, I think needs some further investigation and needs to be looked into. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Ms. Brown. Mr. Box?
Yeah. So she talked about, I thought she said she perhaps works with the developer of Stone Mill, which is David Yost. So it is worth noting that Mark sent Mr. Yost the plans for this over a month ago. So that there's no confusion here that this is some sort of like surprise. You mentioned fire suppression. I want to clarify. So this is a revised site plan that was sent to staff last week. Not sure why it didn't make it in the staff report, but we now meet fire access requirements, and so it won't be sprinkled. Yeah, that's an old plan. So we meet fire access requirements, so it won't be sprinkled. I'm not sure about Tom Brady, but I bet Patrick Mahomes could throw a football from Stone Mill to the duplex development that's right here. That is almost identical in the density that we have. And then, of course, if you go south of that, I'm not sure they could throw it over the homes, depending on the height of the homes, but the mobile home park, greater density than what we have, and the multifamily approved here, greater density than what we have. So in terms of density, it's absolutely compatible with the area. it's a product that we think is going to be very desirable, and we'd ask for your approval.
There has not been a neighborhood meeting. I would like to see there be at least a conversation with the neighbors. Can we do that?
Yeah.
Can we take 2 weeks and go do that?
Do you want to defer it 2 weeks? I mean, what our preference would be do it between now and city council. Again, we sent these plans a month ago. No letters were sent in. I'm not sure why we need to defer it. Our preference would be let's move it forward and we can talk over the next 6 weeks.
I think that there is a desire. Would it slow you all down for 2 weeks? I think it'd be a good idea if we could just have the conversation. And then, I mean, that's my statement to you all, is could we take 2 weeks? And then I still have another statement to make to our neighbors about this as well.
I'd like to add a question.
Please.
I don't think I was reading the site plan when I was reviewing it previously, but the little green interruptions in the northern road, those are dead ends. I was not aware of that. What happens in the green space between the two dead ends?
Driveways.
And why? Why is it like that?
Yeah, so there'll be driveways. Again, if you recall that image I showed you when I zoomed in on Muirfield, those become the driveways and the access to the garages.
But why not have the street go continuous through there? I mean, the lots are the same. How is that land used in that little no man's square between two dead ends?
Part of a lot.
Right, so it becomes part of a lot, but if you think of Muirfield, the reason why those end up dead ending is you create an enclave of units, and it's a little almost pocket style neighborhood where the front doors and if they have porches are all looking out into that space. So as you're going north into it, the two first ones look in, and then the other ones are looking south into the same kind of common shared drive. There's multiple examples of this, and it does create kind of a quaint, cute little courtyard of what's 6 to 7 neighbors looking in on each other.
It'll feel more intimate.
Yeah, I can get that. I just kind of wanted to understand it because I'm not.
Weird in this. I wish there was a way we could go live on Google Earth and I could show you those other developments, but.
Sure, and I just wanted to state, from my own personal point of view on this, is the density is not at all an issue to me. I think the bringing the buildings more closely together actually can provide some benefit to the people that buy or rent them or whatever it may be, in creating more protected spaces that are shaded, that are out of the wind. Some of these homes have, there's ways of developing that into nice space. That's not my concern. And then one other question on the site plan with the dark. So the main road, is that black zone? Is that sidewalk? Is that like asphalt sidewalk, or is that just, what does that represent?
It's right-of-way, the right-of-way line.
The right-of-way line, okay. So then I just wanted to raise the question of sidewalks, but with mentioning sidewalks, I think that the next statement would be, as you've explained the kind of the cluster development with the dead ends, it would be easier to understand how that works. I guess I can see a little taste of one over here in the middle. Point being, if I know this is not a plat, this isn't the final, so there's a whole nother process of agreeing all that, but so I'm saying this now because if this moves forward and you come back, I would like to understand better, how do these drives work? Do we discuss limiting driveway width to each specific unit, or is it an overall for each duplex? Because if you extrapolate out this prototype to every single lot, it's going to look like a lot more concrete. It's not going to be that much green. So I kind of want to make sure that we consider, I am actually in support of this development, but I do want to make sure that we consider, when the plat comes back, sidewalks and the amount of paving, which may actually say sidewalks aren't the right thing to do.
Well, we do require the sidewalks, right?
Yeah, so we agreed to the TE5, which was.
So you agreed to sidewalks?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, I think that's good, but I think we want to see what that looks like and understand that in the context of how much driveway and how do they.
When we get to platting.
When we get to platting,
Yeah.
of course. So I just wanted to make that statement.
Where are we on the continuance?
Whether continued or not, I'd want.
Well, I want to hear from the applicant.
Well, okay.
I had a quick question before that. I wasn't here last meeting,
and I guess it was heard last time?
No.
No?
Mm-mm.
It was continued?
There's another development that's also proposed on Coltrane, but
Okay.
further north.
Okay, well, my question is, there was,
Was it deferred last time too?
July
Okay.
25th.
But I thought we also had another one that was. Yeah.
okay. Well, it said if there's one access, it has to have fire access, it has to have fire suppression. Now it's changed to 2 accesses to remove the fire suppression, but one of them smaller than the other. As a emergency response question, if you have the second access, but that second access isn't connected all the way down, it's really not a second access. I also have street name question, like if fire EMS or PD were responding and you have a street name, all they're gonna have other than a house address to know which one of those hammerheads to turn down. It seems like, I don't know how, even if it was approved, and there's a lot of questions that come back just on access or emergency response through the plat process.
Well, I mean, I guess I'd say, how do they do it at Muirfield and the development north of that and the one, I mean, I don't know. We can find you those answers at the time of platting.
They might have named each one of those streets, the stubs might all need a name.
Yeah,
is what I'm
and maybe,
getting at.
whatever it is, you know, we'll have to comply with. But this is not we're not reinventing the wheel here. I mean, this is.
Been done.
It's my first
Done.
wheel of this type, that's why I had that question.
I have to say that I am in agreement with Commissioner Pennington about taking the time to meet with the neighbors. I think that really is something you need to do before we vote on this.
That's fine. I mean, again, doesn't matter, but these were sent to them over a month ago, so it's a little frustrating they just show up today. These are sophisticated folks. They could have sent in a letter, seemed fairly intentional to delay us, but we would love to go meet with them. I'll bring a football, and we'll see how far we can throw it.
Appreciate your willingness to meet with them before it comes back to us. And truly, because if they didn't reach out in advance, we always appreciate when the applicants take more time when we press hard. The football comment, that was the thing I wanted to add too. The density, I agree, I'm fine with it. To me, you haven't focused that much on the frontier city. This seems like so that the neighbors are aware what I will feel like when it comes back. This is the right transition from Frontier City to Stone Mill. The Diamondback roller coaster looks to me like it's about 50 yards away from the east end of this. Tom Brady could throw a football to somebody on a roller coaster. So this isn't mobile homes. This isn't a 4-story apartment. These are homes transitioning from Frontier City right there to Stone Mill. So to me, this density is appropriate as a transition. Frontier City right there. I don't think we're not gonna get huge mansions down below the Diamondback roller coaster.
So, sounds like there's consensus for us to take 2 weeks and meet with the neighbors, and I'm happy to join in those conversations with the neighbors. But I hope that our neighbors were listening. You clearly hear where the commission is, and the commission said a few things pretty loud and clear. Number one, it's appropriate. The density is appropriate. And we have the ability to address the issues with regard to fire suppression. So there is and this is consistent with other development that's even in the immediate surrounding area of your neighborhood. I have seen a lot of planning commission cases. I've seen a lot of duplex developments. Very few come with a 300-foot landscape buffer to the nearest neighborhood, which is pretty significant. I know it may seem insignificant. The football example is interesting to me, but a 300-foot landscape buffer is significant. We also are not street stubbing to the north because we don't anticipate that there will be any further development in that area immediately adjacent to your neighborhood. And that's why we're also not agreeing to that connection. So I am happy to be a part of the conversations with the neighbors, would love to listen to the neighbors and hear what their concerns are, but I hope you were listening very carefully to where the commission is, because these are the kinds of cases that we deal with every single meeting. And so this is development that's pretty consistent with what we'd expect in an area like this one. So With that, if there's no other comments, I would like to move that we continue PUD 2024 to the next meeting of the Planning Commission.
That's August 22nd.
August 22nd.
No, not right. We're gonna meet again in 2 weeks, so. I have a motion from Commissioner Pennington to continue this item to the 8/22 meeting.
Am I on the right screen?
Yeah.
I didn't get it. There it is.
It's been seconded by Commissioner Noble. Please cast your votes. You hit refresh.
I did twice.
Okay.
It won't pop up.
Voice vote?
I'm a yes.
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 All right.
Mr. Chairman.
Items continue.
Mr. Chairman, I have my contact information. I'd love to share it with our neighbors so that they can just reach out to me directly. I have business cards if you don't mind me passing that along to you, and you can just call me. So we can have this conversation all together. So I'll pass it down here.
All right. We are on to item 20.
Item number 20 is CPA 2024-04, which is consideration of a proposed map amendment to our comprehensive plan, which would remove the employment land use typology layer from the urban low intensity layer in an area generally located near Southwest 15th and South County line.
Vaneri Mujica Ortiz, Planning Department. This is CPA 2024-4. It's a request to amend the comprehensive plan, removing the EM LUDA layer from the urban low. The associated application is 2014. There is the location. In terms of land use, right now is undeveloped. In terms of zoning, and I think this is very important to mention, in terms of zoning right now is two different PUDs. One is PUD 1757, PUD 1840, and is for actually industrial uses. In terms of the land use typology is employment with the base of urban low. In terms of city services, city water is available. Sewer services are available. Emergency services are within urban response time. In terms of finding, this subject site is an excellent site for employment uses due to its proximity to highways, other employment uses, and city infrastructure. The well-served and situated employment land sites are limited to the southwest area of the city, where sites suitable for residential uses are more plentiful. Preserving employment land to facilitate the creation of jobs remains critical to Oklahoma City's overall economic stability and future growth. Removing the EM designation for this 138.30 acres parcel will reduce the amount of development-ready EM land available in the southwest quadrant of the city, lessening the city's ability to retain and attract large employers. Based on the findings above, the staff recommends denial of the request to remove the employment land layer from the urban low intensity LUDA designation. I don't know if you have any questions.
Is it, I mean, as I'm looking through this recitation, I mean, is it fair to say that it's really the employment reserve, we don't use that term anymore, designation that is driving the recommendation for denial? I mean, that's really the issue.
Well, in this case too, the zoning is for industrial uses too. So in this case, we have, it's everything. It is a good site. It has water, it has sewer, it's close to highways. It's actually to the east of it is all industrial already. And like I mentioned before, the city needs large employment areas. We have recently, these have come up a lot, and I think it's important to remember that we still need to have these large sites to be able to compete with other cities for industrial. I like to mention too, like I mentioned, to the east is industrial. We need to think about compatibility too. The site to the east is I-2, so it's heavy industrial uses. So residential, so close to industrial, it's compatibility issues too.
Thank you.
Great. Anything else from
Any other questions?
commissioners?
I think that we've had this debate. I'm looking at Commissioner Powers. I think we've had this debate all the time, and my position still has not changed. If the city wants to reserve land and prevent people from being able to use it, then they need to buy it so that they can decide how they want it to be used. But if the person who owns the property wants the ability to use their right, like we discussed earlier, to rezone their property for a different use, we ought to hear that on the merits. And so for me, I'm going to vote to remove the employment reserve layer, and I'm ready to have a conversation on the merits about what to do with the underlying property.
If I may briefly, David Box 522 Colcord Drive, it is worth noting that the current property owner has been marketing it as industrial, and the market has not come forward to take it down. The comment made is that it is important that we have large sites. Well, we don't have it. If the city wants it, if we, the city, want to have it, go buy it. And they've done that recently. The super site out in west in your ward, and then in Mr. Privett's ward. Can't think of what we call it, but along I-40 to the east. That's how you attract large users, is that you have it. But to say that we have it because of a comprehensive plan designation, that's just not how the market works. Large employers aren't looking to the comprehensive plan to say, well, I wonder where the city has carved out and installed private development so we can come in and buy it. No. It's been marketed, it's zone industrial, no one's wanted to touch it.
Well, and David, are you talking about the one on 240 that the city did buy in 577?
Yes.
240, 577, yeah.
I think there's maybe a lock supply, I don't know, there's a bunch of large scale.
Yeah, it's 577 acres.
Correct.
Yeah.
I think that's what it's called.
Yeah, that's exactly what it's called, 577.com.
Mr. Chairman, is there anybody here who wants to speak on this issue?
So I do have someone signed up to speak, but what I wanted to clarify, I wanted to ask Ms. Tammy Tortle. She signed up to speak on this item, but it might be for the next item, actually. So, okay, all right, yeah. So this is for item 21.
So, I may be off base here, but I find it somewhat persuasive that there are not people here from the Chamber of Commerce and their division with respect to the attraction of, large property owners, users, or
economic development director.
Yeah, the economic development agencies that the city, partners with on these kind of things. We have talked about this many, many times. And, my view almost always is to support the plan and support staff. But at the same time, this is an issue about which I think if we're going to get serious about it, we have to get serious about it. I'm not quite as adamant that, people have the right to use their own property and that these reserves don't mean anything or don't have any power. I'm not quite there. But as they come up one by one, and there is an actual history, for instance, of this property being advertised for sale to be used for industrial uses and nobody's interested. I mean, that is somewhat persuasive, I think. I'm not sure that makes it an ideal place to put residential property, but nonetheless, with respect to the issue of the removal of the employment reserve, I think it is instructive, so.
Anybody else have anything?
I'm also in support of really leaning on the comprehensive plan as an important document. In our study sessions, we talked about large tracts and preserving sort of, as opposed to, breaking them up where you can never go back once you put a development in the middle of a larger tract. I don't really see this as the same case in that regard with comprehensive plan issues. There is both residential developments existing and currently building out adjacent to this parcel. We have a landowner that wants to move forward with the development, so I kind of echo Commissioner Pennington's statement on that. Yeah, I think I'll leave it at that. Sorry, my one other point is I wanted to recognize that there are a number of protests, there are some letters, and there are signatures with regard to this from the public interested in keeping it industrial and not approving the change because of the potential residential neighborhood. However, I would speculate, asking myself, or I don't know if there's anyone that would even speak to that, how many of these same people would show up if an industrial development was being proposed here that they wanted to build out a number of large warehouses or factories? I have a feeling we might have some opposition to that as well. Significant. Yeah, so I take these with a grain of salt. I appreciate them, and everyone needs to be heard, but.
They changed their minds, though.
I think the other thing to keep in mind too is the city just purchased large acreage on the north side of Southwest 15th to develop a new regional park there at Swisher Park, right there in the bend on the north side. Industrial areas don't activate public parks, and the other part of that is that there could be the potential opportunity for that park to connect to the West River Trail and even trails down to Mustang. So this area is going to potentially be a hub for recreation, park and recreation space and connectivity through trails. And so that's activated by residents, not by industrial parks. So something to keep in mind. All right.
With all that being said, if there's no more comments, I'm going to move to recommend approval of CPA 2024-04.
A motion from Commissioner Meek to recommend approval to City Council of CPA 2024-04. It's been seconded by Commissioner Pennington. Please cast your votes. All right, I'm sorry, that's a final decision. It does not go to City Council. That item passes.
Thank you.
Item 21.
Item 21 is the companion zoning item to the last item. It's PUD 2014, an application to rezone 2140 South County Line Road from PUD 1757 and PUD 1840 to the new PUD 2014.
Once again, David Box, 522 Colcord Drive, on behalf of the applicant who's here with us. This, of course, is the companion case, and so what we are proposing is a PUD that would allow for residential development. When we filed the PUD, we had a number of 30-foot wide lots, 40-foot wide lots, and 50-foot wide lots. The 30-foot wide lots are what caused, I think, a lot of the concern. There was I think, a well-attended neighborhood meeting last week. I didn't have the opportunity to be there, but I know Commissioner Powers, Commissioner Meek, as well as my client attended that meeting. The result of the meeting was my client, in discussing it with the neighbors, has agreed to remove all of the 30-foot lots, and now it'll just be a series of 40-foot lots and 50-foot lots. That decision did generate a support letter that I know was emailed to Commissioner Meek and Councilwoman Peck and has been distributed to you as well. So we thank the neighbors for their willingness to sit down and talk and listen, and I think a good result was achieved. So there are two TEs. both of which we agreed to. And I also handed out a separate document so that I didn't waste everyone's time reading this out loud, that I would like to submit as our TE number 3. And what this does via the red X's that were crudely drawn on here by the engineer is that this will remove all reference to the 30-foot lots so that we are ensured to have just the 40s and the 50s. And we are happy to answer any questions. And as was stated last time, I do think it's important that this, that park is there. We've been in discussions with Councilwoman Peck, how we're going to make this neighborhood be able to access that. It's a great thing that the city's doing that. It's why I think you're seeing so much residential development in this area. So we hope this will be a complementary piece to that park.
All right. Commissioner Meek, you want to lead the discussion?
Yes, and I know we have people signed up to speak. First, I wanted to address a few things. I want to thank Commissioner Powers for coming to the meeting with me. It was well attended, like Mr. Box said. I do understand that this area is going to develop. There's no way to really stop this. The park across the street makes it a lot more beneficial for residential. I appreciate the applicant. I appreciate the neighborhood that Mr. Morris put together, a neighborhood group. They were the same ones that, had all the protest letters in, and in the meetings that they've held, both public and then with the HOA directors and HOA committee members met later at the applicant's offices. They came to an agreement, and now they have a letter of support. With all that being said, I'm ready to listen to the people that have signed up to speak.
Ms. Tammy Tortle?
In your past proposals, you were saying that it would change the character of the area, and I believe these houses that they're trying to propose be built is going to change the character of the area. If you look around the area, the houses around us are on bigger lots. We have nice homes. Our driveways are 30 feet long. I know they said they took that out of the proposal, but still, those are still significantly smaller houses than what is built around our area. I think that's the concern of myself and my neighbors, is that it's going to deplete the value of our homes. I've been a resident there for 20 years in my home, and when we first moved there, there was nothing in our area. But we keep getting smaller neighborhoods, bigger neighborhoods, and I think we want something, if they were to build a home site there, it would be something more substantial homes that would compete with what we currently own. And that's, I'm concerned also about County Line Road. They're going to put all 3 entrances to that neighborhood on County Line. If you've ever driven down County Line, I live on County Line Road. There's motorcycles that drive down that road at 150 miles an hour, and there's no police force there to enforce the speed. We're constantly seeing cars zoom past there. Oops, sorry. So my concern is all that traffic on County Line Road. It's already hard to get in and out of our neighborhood on County Line Road area due to most of the people from Hobby Lobby drive down County Line Road instead of going down Council because they know that they can speed through this neighborhood area. Those are my concerns. Like I said, 800 homes is a bit much for that area. I think they should, if this is where it's going to go, it seems like it's going to go this way. That they increase the size and a quality of home, because the quality of homes that this builder's proposing is not the quality that we want in our area. And that's all I have to say.
Thank you.
Eric Main?
Eric Mine, 2224 Renwick Avenue. For reference, if you look at the very northeast corner of the Westbrook subdivision, which would be adjacent to the southwest corner of what's going in right there. You see the big lot there that's got 2 buildings on it. I'm the next house to the south of that. So just for reference. I'd like to first say thank you for the opportunity to speak. Thank you for our neighborhood meeting. As you already said, I would say that you could fill this room probably 4 times over with the number of people that were there. I wasn't aware that people had already written in. I will also say that I can't say that I would be against development. And I'm quite honestly, I'm frankly amazed that it's taken this long for a neighborhood like this to go in. We've lived in this neighborhood since 1999. The neighborhood started in 1998. And we wouldn't live where we lived if there wasn't development. There's a development going in directly south of PUD 1757 right here that is a very nice development, and I don't know specifically whether there was objections to it, but I wouldn't say that I had objected to it other than the fact that I've long enjoyed having a cow pasture behind my house. It's been very nice. But the development that is being proposed to go in there, even taking out the 30-foot lots, the 30-foot lots that they were going to put in there were going to have 900 square foot homes on them. This neighborhood that we live in, the minimum house size is 3,000 square feet. For reference, a 900 square foot house would almost fit in my garage. Okay. The houses that are going into the south of that are $500,000 plus homes, and taking away these 30-foot lots is almost kind of an insult. You know, it almost feels like it was a tactical plan to say, okay, we're going to put in 30-foot, 40-foot, and 50-foot, and then when we have our objection, okay, we'll take away the 30-foot houses. The 40 and 50s are small. The neighborhood that is being built right now, PUD 1974, I guess it's called. This is the first time I've been part of anything like this, so I'm trying to use your terminology. But the houses going into the north of our neighborhood right there by themselves are not commensurate with the quality and the type of houses that are existing in this area and that are being built to the south. The houses that are going to go into PUD 1757 are going to make those people angry. Okay, these houses are not what belongs in this area that has spent, you know, coming up on 25 years of time of us living there and making it a good community and making what it should be. So I intended for my comments to be brief. I don't want to overlay with what's going on there, but there's a lot of people that are going to be very, very upset if this is allowed to continue. So thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Anything for me?
Mm-mm.
Thank you.
Those were the only 2 I had signed up to speak.
I'm looking forward to some commissioner comments. I think you guys got to understand that it's getting crazy out there. It's crazy out there. It's been crazy out there. The Hobby Lobby portion of it, that in and of itself makes me avoid that area at all costs, okay? At the neighborhood meeting, we both heard that a lot of the request was that there would be a street that extends north out to 15th and solve a lot of the congestion on County Line Road, with all 3 of their access points being there. And it's just not possible because, and I don't understand all of it, the owners that own the land that currently have it under contract, they own both sides. I think they're trying to hold the north side for commercial use. I really do. Because the current contract is only the square that does not extend all the way up to Southwest 15th. And they don't want to parcel out a strip for an access up there because that'll ruin whatever their future plan may be. I also agree with you that might have been a way of throwing the 30s in there to remove, hey, we made a move to help, and they get the 40s. I also agree that addition doesn't fit well with the additions that are nearby. However, with all that said, I gotta, like I said, I'm out here in this area, we've released these monster additions in these areas that have poor traffic, lack of police presence, schools overflowing. I mean, we hear all of this all the time, and still yet we have to deal with them on a case-by-case basis. The Westbrook addition was well represented, and as the HOA, they understood that there's give and take, that they've had to take, they have to take what they've offered now, but they got away from the 30s. I'm telling my fellow commissioners right now, I'm ready to fight 30s all the time in this area, in the rural part where there's no city services, there's no mass transit. It's just not a product, I think, no matter what developers or the market that they want to say about the market and affordable housing, I can find the complete opposite to defend my point of view. So I appreciate the applicant, I do, removing the 30-foot lots. I don't think that's a doable thing in my ward. I'm gonna be against it on a case-by-case basis as often as I can. Any other thoughts, guys, with this? Because I know the addition that you were speaking of is called Bellflower, and you're right, there's nobody there to come, and nobody lives there yet to come and help fight with, but all these developers, they all understand that they gotta build a product that'll sell in the end. That's what they gotta have. And so even competing developers being on both sides, opposite sides of County Line Road, they all have to be able to try to sell their product, or they're not going to work. The park carries a lot of weight that's coming in on the other side of 15th, and that may help. But then again, one thing I've learned on being on the commission is that all these roofs have to happen to improve the infrastructure, that it follows, and it's just not there yet. And so I see that there ought to be some improvements on the horizon for traffic. Just that issue of itself is a nightmare.
I have 20 seconds to address one thing that you said. 20 seconds. You need to come to the podium if you're going to speak, and I'll give you 1 minute.
20 seconds, all I need. So you said affordable housing, that was something that they brought up
Right.
during the meeting. The 900 square foot houses, when they existed, they intended to market those for $180,000.
Right,
Those were
$200
numbers
a
that
foot.
they used. That's $200 a square foot. My house, as it's currently valued by a number of different real estate entities, is on the order of maybe $120 a square foot. So if we're talking about making affordable housing,
I agree.
I'm in disagreement with that.
I wanted to just make a point about this. I think this is way too dense, in my humble opinion. But I want us to think about, as we've been working on the task force and working through the ADU ordinance and doing all that, we've talked an awful lot about density, and one of the main justifications for even considering the ADU ordinance has to do with bringing density to the core. The idea behind that being the cost of providing services, increasing the further away from the core you get. And I think if we are taking steps, which we clearly are, to try to increase density in the center of Oklahoma City, it doesn't make any sense for us to continue to encourage increased density at the fringe. I mean, it's just counterproductive. And I think we need to give some serious thought to whether 30 or 40-foot lots are solving any kind of problem. With respect to the issue of, we won't even talk about affordable, we'll talk about housing availability. But to me, we have kind of a short-term problem with respect to interest rates that are driving a difficulty in acquiring housing for way too many people, and I get that. But I think, unfortunately, the choices and the decisions we make are not short-term. They're not, immediate, and they're not Band-Aids. They're going to change the character of large swaths of the city. And I think we just have to be very mindful and careful about how we go about that.
Right, and I understand the Westbrook addition, these people live here 25 plus years with like 70-foot lot minimums, is that correct? You know, their driveways are wider than some of these lots. And so I understand, and something that carries a big weight is that we've got this neighborhood HOA supporting, and we don't have a whole lot of protesters here because they did work it out so well. But I'm using my time to speak to talk about, you know, every one of these that we release is just making it worse on the next one. And guys, at some point, we got to like block the funnel.
Well, go ahead.
Yep, Mr. Chair, if I may, if the applicant and the neighbors will bear with us, the big picture that you guys are talking about, mostly Commissioner Powers, you said it's counterproductive to have both the density in the core and out here. I'm not sure why. I'm not sure why we can't. To me, if we have more density in both, lowers the price of both. The counterproductive comment you made, either now or maybe when we're into the session, or you can just call me, but I don't see them as counterproductive. I don't see the density on the outskirts hurting our efforts for more density in the core.
My specific point was that you're increasing the cost of providing services the further you are from the core. So if you build more and more housing out there, you're increasing that cost.
Okay.
And that being counterproductive to the idea that the way you avoid that is by bringing the density in.
But those services are already there, so by the fact that they're already there, the more houses, it's actually making it cheaper.
I'd agree with that, because otherwise, if we don't have the density, if the service is there, then later, 10 years from now, we'll be trying to maneuver around and make it more dense where the services are. So anyhow, I like the density both. I try to encourage, when we're in the core, I try to do as much as I can until it gets really crazy. I think that I will go back. On this specific applicant agreed that 30, you and I might have debated it a little bit, don't know where it would have fell out, but the fact that the applicant and the neighbors came together with a compromise, that makes this one to me easy, and appreciate both the applicant and the neighbors working together on that. In future ones, I get what you're saying, the slippery slope, but to try to bring down the price of housing, even though that $180,000 is a lot, it'll be worse if we, the less dense, the worse it'll be, but there is a level at which those 30-foot lots are tough. I think only one time did I can't remember, we rarely came on board with 30-foot lots, so good compromise on this one at least.
Right. And just like what you said, Commissioner Meek, I think 50-foot lots would make us even more happy, but the idea that the public school system is good, the attraction is there, the land values make it so that 40-footers are what pencils now, as they would say, and so it's a tough compromise, but I mean, I'd rather see 50s, just like at a minimum, but.
I also have less heartburn. Oh, go ahead, Commissioner Newman.
I agree that I think this is appropriate for this development as far as the park and the infrastructure and things of that nature. But the one thing that we're, in my ward, for instance, a lot of times we'll have water and sewer. The thing we don't have are the roads. And those are very, very expensive things. So the more people we put in those areas that do not have the developed roads, the more burden we put on those roads. And we're going to spend tons and tons of money putting in roadways to support.
But the only way we can get the roads is to get the people there to get the roads.
Right. All along I've said, if a 30-foot wide house or a 20-foot wide house is a marketable item that you as a developer think that you can sell, put it on a 50-foot lot. I don't care how wide you build a house. You know, R1 base zoning's 50. Since then, like I said, I've drank the Kool-Aid. They come out as fast and furious, and everyone wants 30s, you know, and that's the new game. I'm drawing the line as far as Ward 3 goes, where I don't want the 30s. I'm going to fight the 30s, and so then we settle. We settle for a 40. If you still want to build a 20-foot house on that 40, knock yourself out, you know. But at every 10 feet we can get is pretty dang near it. From the 30 to 40, it allows you to park a car
next to your driveway without being parked in front of your neighbor's house. So every little bit that I can just chop away, I'm the guy that wanted the main thoroughfares to have the nicer fences, the HOA fence. They've given us that. There were more concessions than the 30-foot lots. There's a walking trail, there's more common space. I believe the density fits the comp plan. So it's just, I'm ready to swallow that pill. It's just a hard pill to swallow.
It may be time for some of the more suburban, I hate that term in Oklahoma City, I hate it, but I'm still using it, commissioners to come together and have a conversation about what it means to say, where do we draw the line? I think it's hard. Right. But for me, on this particular application, we're still talking about public water, public sewer, has adequate services.
That's why they're coming to this area.
Having more
That's why
density
it's
makes sense
overflowing.
when you have all of that available.
Right.
And the bottom line is people want to buy it. We want people to continue to be able to come into our city. We want to make sure that they have high quality housing. And I get that that's your concern with that the 30-foot lot is, will it be of a quality that is something that we can stand by in the long run? And so maybe we need to have some more discussions with staff around what the 30-foot lot means with regard to utilities and other concerns that we have. And I think that would be helpful for us in the long run. I think we do want to make sure that whatever action we're taking is consistent with what people want to buy. Right. And as long as people want to live in places where these suburban school districts are performing better than our urban school districts, then people are going to keep on doing it. And so I think we have to really respect what people want, right, too, when we're making our decisions.
The last thing I want to say, and then I promise I'll shut up, is that there's give and take with staff. And I'm going to say it again, I think there ought to be, period. It doesn't matter if it's a PUD, doesn't matter if it's a SPUD, doesn't matter what it is, there ought to be minimum developmental requirements, period. And I think from what I've learned sitting here, that you can create a PUD and just change whatever you want. There's no minimum. You can create a whole new monster if you want and try to get it down the road. One thing that I'd be remiss to not speak about is when you try to go below R1 base zoning 50-foot wide lot, is that the right-of-way of a street should be wider than. And I don't think that's a product that balances out with their, price per square foot of the houses they're trying to sell. The reason why I say that is because when you go less than 50, there's more street parking. And when you have cars on both sides of the street, and it's a trash day, and you shove trash cans everywhere, try to get a fire truck, an ambulance, and 4 cops through there on a 911 call. You know what I'm getting at? It's, even if it was duplexes, even if it was just all RA2 duplex kind of stuff, the right-of-ways need to be looked at. I know that with several people on the council, they're concerned about setbacks. You can have a setback on the front of a house be less than normal, but we ought to be making driveways have a further setback so that when you walk down a sidewalk, you don't have to walk around out into the street to get around cars. This Bellflower that's on the other side and this one that we're looking at right now, they're going to be nightmares for public safety responses. But like I said, here we are.
We ready for a motion?
I don't know.
No, I'm sorry, ma'am, the public speaking portion is passed. Are we ready for a motion?
Sure. With the approval of the neighborhood HOA and the meetings that have been held and the applicant's willingness to reduce the 30-foot lots, I am going to move to approve PUD 2014.
A motion.
Recommend approval.
We have a motion from Commissioner Reed. Is this subject to the technical evaluations?
Oh, yes, the technical evaluation, number 1 being added, stand by. Let me turn page. Sorry.
So we agree to the two listed, and then we're adding TE3.
Right. Yeah, the two listed and TE3 removing the 30-foot lots.
May I ask a clarification from staff?
Yes, ma'am.
So on the handout, you are striking the second bullet, which, are we striking the whole second bullet? So in other words, the 30-foot lot widths go away, but also the minimum lot size of 3,600?
Yes.
Okay. May
And
I,
the same for those.
may I propose?
total bullets.
May I propose a TE to address that and see?
Yes.
Because I was trying to write it and it'll help later. Okay, what about revise section 9 to remove the option for 3,600 square foot lots and 30-foot lot widths and references to lot widths that are less than 40 feet?
What she said. Perfect.
You didn't like our crude X's?
I just like the public to hear what the TE is.
So is that TE4? Or is that?
That would be TE3.
That's TE3, okay.
Brad put a lot of work into those X's.
All right, so I have a motion from Commissioner Meek to recommend approval of PUD 2014, subject to TEs 1, 2, and the additional TE3 is read into the record. It's been seconded by Commissioner Privet. Please cast your votes. That item passes.
Thank you.
Item 22.
Okay, the next two items are related, and they are both ordinance amendments proposed to address home sharing. Lisa Chronister is here. Item 22 is to introduce and set for recommendation at a public hearing on September 12th an ordinance that would modify Chapter 59. And then item 23 is to introduce and set for recommendation at a public hearing on September 12, 2024, an ordinance relating to Chapter 13, which is our licensing chapter. And Lisa Chronister.
Hello, good afternoon. It's just me before 5 o'clock, right? Lisa Chronister, Assistant Planning Director, here to present home sharing. So I will... So what I'm presenting is the same thing you heard at your study session from a few weeks ago, representing it here for those who couldn't make it and for the public. I'll talk about the background of home share regulations. I'll talk about a little more info about the activity of home sharing since the original ordinance was passed. Talk about the Board of Adjustment process. Then I'll talk about how we got to our proposed new ordinance and what those proposed changes are. So the current ordinance was adopted in 2019. It covered two chapters, one in Chapter 13 that required a license. It established a fee. It also described set application fee for special exception cases, and it set some parameters for the revocation of the license. Then the Chapter 59 changes. It is what defined lodging accommodations home sharing, and it said it was a use that does not exceed 30 days. It also described a special exception requirement for properties that were not the primary residence of the host or any home shares that were located in historic preservation districts. So home sharing since 2019, as of last summer, there were almost 700 licensed home shares. Home shares are in every ward of the city. They're not just a urban core thing or a rural thing. They're everywhere. And of those almost 700 home shares, our most recent data on the number of special exceptions is 227. And the home shares have been the bulk of Board of Adjustment cases for the last several years, numbering dozens, up to dozens per month. So the Board of Adjustment has certain criteria in their ordinance that they consider for any action they do, for any special exception, for any variance. They consider if the proposed use is harmonious with the zoning district, that it doesn't have an adverse effect on neighboring properties, that traffic isn't overwhelming, that there's enough parking, that it at least meets the zoning district requirements, and towards that end, many cases are often conditioned with operating hours or additional screening. So for home shares in particular, the board has often limited the number of guests, generally calculating it 2 guests per bed, no more than 4 guests to a bathroom. The board always assesses the availability of off-street parking areas and typically asks for a site plan or photo showing where that parking is on the site. And the board also often asks the host to post rules of conduct, and if necessary, include quiet hours. So in last spring 2023, the Planning Commission was asked to conduct a focus group outreach with residents, home share operators, with individual Board of Adjustment members and city staff to see if any improvements could be done relative to all of the home share cases, to see if there was a way to standardize many of the things that the board was already looking at in terms of occupancy, quiet hours, parking, to help the board make more consistent decisions and give some more peace of mind to residents about the status of home shares. So we did all of that outreach last summer. From residents, we heard concerns about noise, especially late at night and outside. We heard people concerned about parking, that there's too many cars on the street. A lot of the concerns about parking and noise are related to events, parties that were really disruptive to the neighborhood. Residents also voiced concerns about that some neighborhoods had unusually high concentrations of home shares, and that was kind of diminishing the stability of their neighborhood and their ability to know their neighbors. There was also great concern about owners who did not bother to get licenses or special exception permits, and then concerns about how noise complaints could be made, how property maintenance complaints could be made. Next, for hosts and operators, we're concerned that there seemed to be few penalties for owners who did not go through the licensing process. Operators felt that those who had gotten the required permits were following the rules and didn't have any issues. They were also concerned about the extent to which some of their personal information would be made publicly available because of privacy concerns, and also for making it publicly known exactly which houses were home shares, because they are vacant some of the time, and if they're not vacant, they're often hosting out-of-town guests, so security issues related to that. Next, the board recommended a variety of specific regulations, again, to help them make more consistent decisions. And city staff talked a lot about enforceability, about the limits of that, what staff could really do, what processes were already in place to log complaints and address concerns. So again, see next, one more click. So for our proposed changes, I want to reiterate what is not changing. We're not changing the requirement that all home shares obtain a license. That's still a requirement. We're not changing anything about the fact that a special exception is required for home shares that aren't the primary residence of the host. We're not changing that home shares in HP districts need a special exception, and we're not changing anything about the licensing fees or the special exception fees. So proposed changes for Chapter 13, and I recognize the Planning Commission doesn't usually get involved in Chapter 13, but we're bringing this to you for recommendation because it's companion to the Chapter 59 change. We are better defining primary residence and clarifying what the proof is for that. Again, that's related to the fact that home shares that aren't the primary residence of the host have to get a special exception. Chapter 13 also sets a maximum occupancy limit between the hours 11 and 6. And that occupancy limit is calculated on the number of bedrooms times 2 plus 2, but there's a maximum of 16 regardless of the number of bedrooms. And one thing that was related to resident concerns is that there's been a discussion for years at the board about the extent to which they could consider restrictive covenants, deed restrictions, or lease agreements. Like if people came in with a home share application that was not allowed by their HOA, how did that get evaluated? So we're proposing to add language that specifically authorizes the board to consider that. So the Chapter 13 changes would apply to all home shares, not just special exception home shares, but all home shares. Then the Chapter 59 changes would only affect special exception home shares. So those changes, we're proposing a minimum stay of 2 nights. We propose to reduce the maximum term of home shares from a home share SE from 10 years to 5 years. The practice the last many years since 2019 is to give first-time operators a 1-year term and then slightly longer, but still not 10-year terms after that. We're proposing to limit the number of home sharing special exceptions to not exceed 10% of the units on any given block. That was in direct response to the concern about oversaturation and how that might be curbed, again, to promote neighborhood stability. The established off-street parking requirement, 1 space for every 4 occupants. Again, that's somewhere on the site. Again, authorize a Board of Adjustment to consider covenants, deed restrictions, and lease agreements. And then add some language to clarify how a special exception could be revoked. So at your study session from a couple weeks ago, there were a couple of suggestions I wanted to note. One was a recommendation, a suggestion, discussion point to term home shares as short-term rentals. Short-term rentals is a perhaps a more common term, and staff agrees that could be done. We specifically propose that it just be added to instead of replacing it. But that is a change that upon your recommendation, we would make in the version that goes to council. There was also discussion about making it clear that the property owner has to authorize a tenant if the tenant wants to home share the place, and there is already a line about that under application requirements. With that, so real quick on the next steps. So introduction here, August 8th. This will come back to you September 12th for recommendation. It will be heard at Board of Adjustment next Thursday, and then after it's been to Planning Commission and Board of Adjustment, we'll go through council hearings. And with that, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Lisa, I have a few. How did we land on 2 nights as a minimum?
Well, it always comes up when I'm on Board of Adjustment that many people don't like the one-night stays. They're in and out, and no, I don't.
But as opposed to,
Well, yeah, the
Two's kind of the
idea,
standard across the nation, but.
yeah, the idea was if it was for more than one night, would that reduce special events and parties? And so 2 nights just seemed like the logical extension of that. So I actually don't remember any further discussion other than 2. I know when we were talking about the durations, the operators wanted the duration as short as possible.
I do see in there, if the dwelling unit being offered for home sharing is not the primary residence of the host, the rental of the dwelling unit may not be less than 2 nights per renter guest.
right, as opposed to,
In the new language, right.
opposed to 3 nights or a
Yeah,
week or whatever.
it was to alleviate the one-night party. The biggest problem with adding that to the ordinance is it's not enforceable, and so the operator can do whatever the operator wants to do anyway.
Well, yeah, I think, the issue of enforceability is something that I don't think we can ignore or, but it's something,
But to write in a directive that's not enforceable, it doesn't have meaning is what I worry about.
yeah,
Most of it does. I mean, there's still illegal home shares out there that they don't report anything, so.
Well, they can,
nobody knows they're
they
there.
can come to the podium and tell us whatever they want to tell us anyway.
It's
Yeah.
still worth including, because if somebody flaunts it bad enough, then eventually you can enforce it. You may not be able to enforce one instance that is hidden and obscure, but if somebody's violating it over and over, then there can be gathering of documents, and you've done this, and it's provable. Can't enforce every single one,
Right,
but it
but
makes it
what they would be enforcing is the fact that they'd be having a party on Friday night and a party on Saturday night, and we would actually then be enforcing the party, not the fact that it was a 2-night stay.
No, if somebody was renting it out every Friday night for a one-night party and other time, and there is proof that there's not somebody occupying it 2 nights in a row, I mean, eventually you see that that is the party house that is rented all the time, and they're only doing a one-night party.
And that's why we would get them on the party. And
personally, I would like to see it longer than 2 nights. I think all you're really doing is doubling the cost of renting it for 1 night for a party. I mean, and that does not seem like sufficient deterrent to me.
Yeah, but most people are doing this because they're coming into Oklahoma City for a Friday and Saturday night.
I
So,
regularly Airbnb for 2 nights. but
yeah, so
hardly
I
ever for a year.
think 2 nights is a good number.
Sometimes 4 or 5, but,
I also would like to see the limitation on the number of years that there's automatic renewal dropped from 5 to about 3.
so that's what we do is.
Yeah, we only typically give them about a year, right?
Every new one is a year, and then a renewal that's operated well is 3.
I think our very first case, we gave them 5 years.
And this says up to 5, so good operators with no complaints, in theory, you could give them 5 years, but you're saying that's not your
Right,
standard operating.
Yeah, like I said, it happened one time with the last one, and they had 10, so, yeah.
It seems reasonable to me.
And that was just because we didn't really know anything at that time.
What exactly was the nature, I guess, or I'd like to hear some detail about the outreach that was done on this, if you have that available.
Sure. So we met with residents in August, with different groups of residents in August and November of 2023. It was a focus group, so focus groups are typically 12 to 15 people max. We took our lists from specific people recommended by city council members to be included, and from folks who had signed up to speak at Board of Adjustment meetings over the years about home sharing cases, and folks who had contacted us through the years with concerns. So those were our lists for the residents, hosts and operators. Those names came from frequent applicants in different wards, different parts of the city, and also specific recommendations from city council persons. Board of Adjustment, we had to meet with the board in 2 different groups so that we didn't have a quorum. We did that in August of 23 and January of 24. And then we had 2 different meetings with staff being municipal counselor's office, development services, both licensing and code enforcement, and subdivision and zoning staff who processes special exceptions. And we did those in 2 different meetings in June of 2023.
So like how many meetings did you have with residents?
2.
So 2 meetings with 12 to 15 people?
Yes, maximum. That's in addition to our knowledge of when folks write in about home sharing applications, and folks who write into us all the time with concerns, and information from folks who write into council people frequently about their concerns.
I'll just say that does not seem to me like a sufficient amount of outreach at all with residents, but.
Well, I mean, you advertise the meetings, right? And you get 15 people that show up?
They were
invitees.
They were focus groups.
Oh, okay.
So they were invited because we had specific people we were asked to meet with, and we wanted to keep the groups small, and we wanted to keep them diverse.
And they look into peer cities also, and so there's vast amounts of information, because almost every city has different ordinance. Well, I'd say every city has a different ordinance.
Every city has a different ordinance, yes.
It's
by nature.
And every single special exception is a one-off. Every one is different. I mean, so there's just hardly any consistency. So in order to write an ordinance that would capture all of that is impossible. And it's up to the board. I mean, I can tell you, we learn a lot, right? And so we learn a lot through the process. And we're much better than we were a year ago.
Well, I think that's good. I really do. And I also think it's a good thing that the board is being empowered to take into consideration deed restrictions and covenants and restrictions. I'm a little curious about that with the municipal counselor's office, and whether they're okay with that, and whether that's really going to survive the actual application of it. Right. I would really like to see some sort of specific statement in the ordinance that indicates that home sharing or short-term rental is a business. And I think that in and of itself, the city's either got its thumb on one side or the other of that scale. Either it doesn't have anything to do with covenants and we don't do anything about that, or, we're collecting, hotel motel tax on these things. It's a business. And I think that would give neighborhoods that have covenants and restrictions a little more of a level playing field when they go into district court to enforce their own covenants, if they're going to actually do that. Instead of somebody saying, oh, well, city code says this is residential, this is not a business. And so I would really like to see that language included.
Is that right? That, are we not collecting or not contemplating collecting hotel motel tax?
We are.
We do.
Okay.
We have.
It's a business.
For ones that operate.
Long-term rentals is a business too.
Actually, that for anyone that runs through Airbnb, VRBO, they collect
pay
it.
Exactly.
So even if they don't have a license with the city,
Right,
they
the
still
city
pay.
has agreements with Airbnb and
collect it from
VRBO
them,
to
yeah.
collect. We don't have agreements with other.
Yeah, okay, good.
Operating
I thought what you were
organizations.
saying it was we were not going to. I was
No,
be
we
sure
do.
we're
Oh, we
doing
do.
it.
Definitely do.
Especially with the possible increase in the hotel motel tax, they can't have an advantage.
Right, and that's,
Over the
I
hotel
think
motel.
that drove that more than anything. Is
Okay.
Hotel owners.
Mr. Chair, so I had one thing from the full presentation. Go ahead.
I'm sorry, real quick. Janice, I'm sorry, you were specifically suggesting, I missed specifically what you were suggesting.
That there be language in the ordinance that indicates that short-term rental is a business.
But long-term rentals are a business too.
And business, because right now it says home sharing, but you're suggesting that it say home sharing.
/ short-term rental is a business.
Just changing it to short-term rental, I think, relates it more to, long-term rental versus short-term rental and not
Because
just sharing your house, like sharing
Just
your.
like you said, they're both a business. In most CCRs, there is one of the bullet points or part of them is that you cannot operate a business within the R1 neighborhood. Yet, you can lease a home. And so if you can short-term lease it or long-term lease it, you probably can't differentiate one a business over the other.
Well, yeah, but businesses, people who lease their home on a long-term basis are not paying hotel motel tax on it.
Right.
I mean,
They're paying property tax.
and they're not, probably, well, I don't know about taxes and that kind of stuff. But clearly, if you're doing short-term rental, that's a business. There's no two ways about it.
So is long-term, yeah, to me.
Well, I think.
You don't long-term lease a property and
I don't lease it
to make
I'm not gonna lease
you're
it
making
to
a
break
profit off
even.
of it, regardless. I think, and I know we're just setting this for hearing, a few things we might consider. Number one, I would strongly encourage, and I know Commissioner Powers is very concerned about making sure we've had sufficient community engagement. I think it's time for us to, as we vote to set this for hearing, directly reach out to the neighbors and stakeholders that we have been in touch with the ADU Ordinance Task Force, and really just make sure we personally, as commissioners, reach out to those community leaders to encourage their attendance. As I say that, when I think about the long meeting we're going to have on the 12th. But the point is, we do want the community to be aware, and we want to hear their feedback. I think the other thing we need to decide, and I think this is individual to you commissioners, you don't have to answer me right now, because I think I think we already have an idea of where we are. If either we're for this or we're not. Like, there comes a certain point where we become so destructive of the idea of having home sharing that it's like, then just vote no and let's not have home sharing, And I think we just need to, there comes a point when we make it so hard to operate one that it's like we may as well just not ban them. We may as well just ban them. I think we need to really think carefully about that line of where people are. My objective, at least with looking at the ordinance, is how do we do it well, really, really well? And I think, and it may be that we need to require longer minimum stays and other things like that, but if our overall idea is that they just shouldn't be allowed or that they shouldn't be allowed in certain neighborhoods, I think it's better for us to go at the problem directly and say that, so that we're more narrowly addressing, so we're getting at the issues, because there's always going to be one-offs, a lot of them. We do have the Board of Adjustment that's going to be making specific decisions about individual licenses, and so we have that backstop. So I do think we all need to, in our own minds, decide where we are. The other thing is, I will be strongly pushing, I don't know that we have that this mechanism exists, so I'll let the municipal counselor's office tell me or not. We have to include in our recommendation that the city needs to increase these fees and that they have to build an enforcement office. It has to happen. It just has to happen. I would be more in support of not having them if we don't find a way to have stronger tools, because every neighborhood meeting I go to, and obviously you all know I'm in a lot of neighborhood meetings these days, it is a complaint about Airbnbs. It is always a complaint. And I know we'll never solve the problem completely, but stronger enforcement will make it a whole lot easier for us to have a higher quality of this product. So anyway, I'm ready to vote for us to set it for hearing.
I completely agree with that statement. We all hear, I'm sure, about Airbnbs or about short-term rentals, and virtually every road leads back to enforcement, either because the complaint gets to a point where you just say, yeah, but we can't enforce that. Yep. Or the complaint itself is that I've called and called and called and there's no enforcement. So, I mean, that message goes out pretty quickly that there's no point in even calling City Hall over something like this. So, I absolutely agree with that. I do think the idea about banning it, you'd be surprised to hear me say this, I think, in certain neighborhoods. The problem with that is that those kind of things shift and change over time. I mean, it might very well be, I kind of favor the idea of limiting the number in any particular area, whether it's 10% or some other number. You know, on a street, there are a couple over in Terrace and in the Capital Medical Zoning District, where I sit on the board, that, you know, it's like they've taken over streets, and that's an issue. But at the same time, you know, there's a very clear, my son
There's
lives
a need for it, yeah.
in Norman, very near the stadium. I mean, there's a demand, there's a need or whatever. So I don't think we want to encourage anything that's going to actually harmfully impact neighbors and neighborhoods. I get that. But at the same time, that demand can shift with, you know, a hot spot in a city. So yes, enforcement, I think almost has to be part of this package. I think it's really hard to say, okay, we'll do this and cross our fingers or take this leap of faith that someday we'll get around to doing better enforcement. I think that's just really problematic.
All right, you ready for a motion?
Oh, no, I had the one thing still I want to address. Great bullets that you went through. Well done before the ADU that's coming up. Good on allowing the Board of Adjustment to consider covenants and deed restrictions. The one thing that jumped out at me was definition of primary residence. That's great. I have a suggestion that you probably already covered, and then I have complexity. Need to be sure the definition says that you can only have one primary, because while it may be subjective to figure out what's a primary residence, what's objective is if an individual has more than one, sorry, you know, then that something's not your primary. The difficulty is, how have you guys addressed when a home is owned by an LLC or a trust or anything else? I haven't seen your details. I hope y'all have worked it out. Because if a home's owned in an LLC with lots of owners, or it's a trust, is it the trustee, the beneficiary, the grantor of the trust? I don't know how you've done the primary residence given the ownership of the home. That's the complexity, not a question or a suggestion, because I don't know how to suggest you resolve it.
Okay, we'll look into that.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right now, it talks about bringing multiple forms of ID and utility bills, but
Yeah, if it's
that
an individual, it's going to
might
be
not
easy.
capture what you're getting.
Yeah, if it's an individual, it's going to be easy, but anything else, somebody's going to, and you can do series LLCs, or you can just set up a new LLC for each one, and how are we going to know if it's a primary residence of an LLC?
Okay, yeah, I will look at that.
As the HOA covenant thing, is that like we defer to those and just let them decide if they want it or not, or is that something we, say, we read their covenants in and say, oh yeah,
Well,
they don't allow it, so.
Yeah, I mean, that was a question I had, is like what kind of nuisance are we creating in the court system if we just allow a permit? Are we gonna ask for proof of their covenants and confirm that there's nothing in there that prohibits it before we approve the application?
Right, it's going to be on their application. Is that what we decided, or we didn't decide? Sarah?
I don't think that we have decided. My preference as staff would be that the applicant certify that their covenants do not prohibit home sharing if this makes it through. And I would imagine, Mr. Noble's not here, I would imagine we'd get to the meeting and someone from the HOA could potentially.
Say, no, that's not true.
Yeah, so I don't want, sorry.
I was going to say, I will say the way it's written is that the covenants have to specifically identify home sharing as our ordinance does, so it can't just be said because it's for business purposes.
Right.
We don't really want the board having to
Legal
interpret.
covenants are publicly available also, so that helps, I guess.
I don't want our staff to be in the business of interpreting covenants and
Right.
restrictions.
Yeah, you don't want to. They're all written by lawyers.
And I don't think that we would have, I'll ask my question to the attorneys, but I don't think we would have the ability to reject an application if there are covenants and restrictions. I think this is written so that the board can consider them, not for staff to decide whether to accept the application.
Are you saying that if the covenant says you're not permitted to operate a business in, this neighborhood, that's not good enough?
I would say it's right.
The covenants have to say you can't operate a short-term rental in the neighborhood. Well, they don't
That's
say
the
that.
intent.
I mean, they don't say that.
Well, they can amend their covenants as well. I mean,
Yeah, have you
No,
tried?
you
That's
cannot.
hard.
That's
real
ridiculous
easy.
comment.
that's how it's written.
I mean, no, that's not gonna
Five percent of the
function.
homeowners get.
Well, again, I think we're starting to get so far into the substance. So, Mr. Chairman, I'm going to move that we set this ordinance for hearing on the 13th.
Sounds good.
12?
Well, excuse me.
All right, I have a motion from
We got
Commissioner
ADUs,
Pennington
right?
to set this for public hearing at the September 12th Planning Commission meeting. Have a second?
They're gonna need to take a vacation.
No, they did.
All right. That item passes. Next item is 23.
Item 23 is the companion ordinance that you just heard about regarding home sharing. This would be to introduce and set for recommendation on September 12th the changes to Chapter 13.
Any
Mr.
discussion
Chairman,
on that?
Mr. Chairman, I move that we set this for hearing on September 12th.
Good man. All right, we have a motion to set
I have a question.
this for public hearing on September 12th. It's been seconded by Commissioner Noble. Please cast your votes.
Shut your mouth. We'll put you on the Board of Adjustment.
That item passes. That brings us to the end of our individual items for consideration. Next item is communications and reports. Planning Commission committees.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, the ADU Ordinance Task Force, which the staff is doing an excellent job keeping us on task. So I want to specifically thank Lisa and her whole team doing an excellent job supporting us. We do have a meeting on August the 27th to have further discussion as a task force about really making specific changes. I would like to get with Commissioner Powers to make sure we're clear about what staff you need to make sure that you've spoken with before we get to that, because I think it would be helpful if you had those conversations before we got to the 27th, if it's possible. I know it's a tight window, but anyway, so we might talk about that. And that's my report, unless the committee, the task force has anything. But I want to talk to you about it.
No other committees? Planning Commission members, Commissioner Powers?
I would just say, we had another Vision Zero meeting this week. Really fascinating process that's underway, and I hope it will be, very productive and useful and actually accomplish its goal. One of the things that I heard at that meeting that has now become part of my lexicon, we were talking about sort of the old way of thinking, which is that, you really can't stop people from doing things if they're going to just ignore the rules. We were talking about distracted and alcohol-related incidents, drivers. And sort of the response to that, this sort of new way of thinking about it, is that you may not be able to stop that, but you can design around it, and you can take it into consideration, and you can, make choices and decisions in recognition of it, if you will. And I think, that's something that we, as a commission, frequently bump our heads up against. You just can't do anything about that. And so I'm going to stop saying that. I'm going to stop telling myself that. I'm going to stop allowing it to control the limits of, action and thought process. So.
Commissioner Mee?
And I had a good time at my meeting this week.
Okay. Commissioner Privet?
I'm good.
Commissioner Newman?
I don't have anything.
All right. Commissioner Pennington?
I want to give a shout out to Commissioner Meek, who does a very great job representing a very tough ward, and you do it with such grace, and you do it with such kindness and such respect for people, because I know it's not easy to have to sit up here and tell people no, and you still always find a way to do it with a lot of respect for people, and I appreciate you and what you do.
Good job. Commissioner Noble? Commissioner LaForge? All right. I don't have anything. Planning Department?
Two very quick things. We are planning on holding a study session next Thursday. Our Office of Sustainability would like to talk about understanding the urban heat island effect in Oklahoma City. So you should receive some information on that. And Commissioner Govine is gone now, but I wanted to say thank you and congratulations to both Commissioners Govine and Newman for being reappointed to this commission until 2030.
Municipal Counselor's Office. All right. That is it. I see no citizens to be heard. We are adjourned.